Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Am I supposed to be able to see your camera?
That's the plan. How
Wow, hi. What's up, Ludwig?
you doing? Yeah, people call me that. Um, I don't watch any Ludwig. Is he a good? What do you think of Ludwig, Destiny?
I feel like he's like a good, entertaining content creator and everything. I don't like that he's like super. He's like very biased towards friends in the industry that he has that I really hate because I think they're bad actors. But like as a content creator, everything he's been around for quite a while. Um, he still supports like old communities that he's from. Like I don't know if he started in the Smash community or not, but he was like involved in that. And then since he's become more wealthy and famous, he's like taken money back to that community to host tournaments and stuff, which I think is cool. But yeah, I just hate his political support for Hassan.
Is he? Could he be the Joe Rogan of the left? Because you guys need that now, right?
Who knows?
How are you feeling? What? I saw some of your election, your post coverage. What is the biggest lesson that you're going to apply in your personal life? Whether it's what you're going to start doing, like in terms of different election coverage or something like that, or
I'm still
how
working
you
on
see
things, but the biggest change that I think it needs to happen is personally, it's going to be me being more like first party officially involved in things. I'm going to try to push for that. And then on a macro level, it's going to be trying to change the media landscape to be more favorable towards liberals, because I think right now it's way too favorable towards conservatives.
Interesting. What do you think why do you think Joe Rogan is right wing? Would you agree with that statement?
The problem, it's a semantic question of like, what does right wing even mean, I guess.
That's true. You could say that.
Yeah. Also, I'm so sorry. When I say semantic question, semantics are incredibly important. I don't think semantics are a.
Oh.
Yeah. But I don't think there's probably not going to be much disagreement on what Joe Rogan's beliefs are. It's going to be a matter of what do we consider right wing. I don't really think that even matters. I don't care. The reality is that he supported the candidate. One of the big advantages that conservative media has over liberal media is every single person in the conservative media sphere, including all of the centrists and everybody else, all of them supported Donald Trump for president. And on the left, there's not that same unifying support, and it's a huge problem, I think. It's one of the media landscape things I'm going to be working a lot to fight against or change.
Yeah, I saw that you said you were going to run a ground campaign if you could. That would be pretty interesting. This was the podcast election. I do think that has truth to it in that old media is pretty much dead. Even they're acknowledging it. And you're certainly on the forefront. We talked about this last time. You're for better or worse, you're one of the singular individuals who are, I don't know, most influential in this regard. So
maybe, but I don't think traditional media is dead. I just think that alternative media is fighting for a lot of space now. But yeah, but I know, yeah, it's not the like the king thing as it was before, maybe, but it's still pretty important, I think.
JJ texted me. He's pretty black-pilled right now.
Sure. Wait, I thought. Oh, JJ, never mind. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
JJ, what would you tell JJ to get him out of his new nihilism arc?
I don't know what he's black-pilled over, so depends. There are some things that are worth being black-pilled over.
I don't know that America voted for a fascist. America voted for someone who tried to lead an insurrection.
While that's factually true, it doesn't logically follow that America voted for him because they endorsed that behavior. What's more likely is they voted for him because they don't really care much about that type of stuff, or they're not even really aware of that kind of stuff because it's just not on their radar.
That's fair. I would agree with you.
You could argue that it's blackpilling that Americans don't care or that they didn't know about it, but
that's fair. So this is very centrist of you. This is very based because you're moving away from he's a threat to democracy fundamentally. That's what we got to hit on.
I mean, I think he is a threat to democracy fundamentally.
Well, sure.
I do wish people cared about that
more. I wish people cared about different things as well. But I guess I'm more. I think you're right. The reality is that people just don't care. And I don't know. I think a lot of it is it's all tribalism. It's not all tribalism because there are independents who would have voted either way. But the mainstay of it is it's just two fundamental different worlds. You've talked about this, right? Some people are in one right-wing echo chamber, fundamentally Fox News or Tucker Carlson and all that, and they're in a completely different world than whoever else, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the left.
But I think these worlds have become more and more separated, especially with the internet, unfortunately.
And what do you think the solution is to that?
Changing, I think
centrism, maybe building bridges.
No. I think that a huge part is changing the left media sphere. I think the left needs to stop letting the right drive so much of the conversation, and they need to be a bit more grounded in what they believe in, and they need to push and be aggressively fighting more for what they believe in. I think the right has gotten basically complete and total control over the entire media narrative.
I think it's because Kamala Harris was not apparently capable of going on Joe Rogan. Do you think that was a serious mistake?
I don't think it would have mattered much one way or the other.
Now that I say it, I don't think it would have tipped the election per se, but it was evidence of something that she's a rehearsed NPC, and Trump, for all his flaws, is at least I can tell when he's lying, right? I can't as easily tell when Kamala or
yeah, I feel like these are third or fourth order issues. I think the more fundamental and important question is why does Kamala Harris need to go on Joe Rogan? I think that's the important question. Why was it that Kamala Harris couldn't win the election unless she went on a podcast that was so avowedly pro-Trump and had been for at least a year?
It was not avowedly pro-Trump.
Absolutely.
It was Trump adjacent. Sure,
I would have bet you $1 trillion. Joe Rogan literally made a tepid statement supporting RFK, and his whole fan base turned on him and was like, "Oh, Laura," and then he was like, "Oh no, I'm not endorsing RFK. I'm not endorsing RFK. I would never do that, guys." Yeah. So no, there's.
But that's different from like Charlie Kirk is a avowed supporter of Trump. If you're going to describe Joe Rogan as an avowed supporter, then what words do we have left to describe Trump and cat turd?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a reality breaking moment. You're delusional if you think there was ever a world where Joe Rogan wasn't going to come out in full support of Donald Trump. Would you agree, for instance, that like probably 80% plus of his fans? I'm not necessarily
disputing that.
Sure,
but there absolutely is a world where if the candidates were different, Joe Rogan could have supported, some left-wing populists. Bernie Sanders is probably too old. That Charlie Kirk would not have supported. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk are fundamentally separate enough where they didn't have to.
Yeah, but we're not in that world. We're in the world where he supported the right-wing candidate, and he had been bringing on people that were supportive of the right-wing candidate, and he had been heading in that direction for a year or more. So then the question is, why is it that in order to win the election, why did Kamala need to go on that platform? Why was that so important? Something is already severely broken there. You're talking about an incumbent, essentially, or at least the vice president of the incumbent. Why does she need to be going on disfavorable media to beat a guy who already lost the last election? That something is not working there, right? Something is fundamentally broken. So to try to break it down to well, she would have went on Joe Rogan, she would have been more I think something's already messed up. That's why I'm fighting against
the degree. Fair enough, and I do think there's something to be said about organized media activity on the right wing. Like they're pretty good about that. To what degree does the left bear any responsibility in this? Do you think? Like Donald Trump won. Mm-hmm. For having a conversation about the left, which is many different individuals and many different factions. And forget the Hassan pipe. Yeah, we know Hassan and them will just say they're not for a socialist revolution, so we're not in favor of them. But I'm talking about like the Pod Save America type crew, your classic sort of liberal Kyle Kalinske type person. What did they do wrong? What did they have wrong?
So the thing that I'm talking about in terms of changing the media environment is I think that the left needs to do in-group, out-group better. The in-group right now is including too many people that are not supporting the candidate or the party. Those are the big things.
Yeah, like Hassan.
Yeah, or Breaking Points, or the Majority Report, kind of, or people like Brianna Joy Gray or Jimmy Dore, all these people who are like the left. Like all of these people need to not be considered part of the in-group of like the Democratic.
Why? Do you not think that Breaking Points and Jimmy Dore and the sort of the populist left have good points that could be adopted by the mainstream
Don't
left?
care if they have good points. The problem is that there's a lot of value in in-group, out-group signaling that the right understands. The right is very good at enforcing in-group behaviors and forcing people to become part of the out-group if they don't adopt them. So, for instance, support of Donald Trump was ubiquitous among every single right-wing media outlet and every single centrist or independent media outlet. On the left, if you were a supporter of the candidate, people kind of made fun of you. Like even when I would go on shows, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm voting for Biden. I'm riding with Biden. Or yeah, I'm voting for Kamala. Like even to be excited about that, I'm going to get roasted by even left-leaning media or whatever.
I think that's circumstantial. That's because Biden was a walking corpse, right?
Donald Trump is a literal authoritarian, senile dipshit who has engaged in multiple crimes, is convicted of 34 felonies, couldn't tell the difference between his wife and another woman, was held civilly liable for rape. Like, it's not even close to comparable.
But as you said, nobody cares about that, but everyone saw that Biden was a walking corpse.
Yeah, but why does nobody care about those things about Trump? It's because anytime
human nature is very just sense-oriented. If I see an old man who can barely talk, it doesn't matter what the other person says. The juxtaposition is so much so that there's no way I can vote for that person.
Yeah, and I think it's because if Donald Trump is accused of something or somebody says something about him, Donald Trump gets to run the gamut on this whole right-wing media circuit that won't hold him to account for literally a single thing. And then on the left, it's like we have to hold our own accountable and all this and all this. Well, not maybe. I mean, that's true. Like, when was the last time Donald Trump was seriously challenged on any podcast that you saw? Was he challenged on? And even this should bother you as a centrist. Do you think Donald Trump was challenged on Lex Fridman or challenged on Joe Rogan?
No, Lex Fridman lacks as much of a spine as I'd like him to have.
Well, no, because when I was on Lex Fridman, we spent an hour talking about me.
You thought that was a challenging interview that Lex gave you?
He spent an hour critiquing my use of the word retarded.
Well,
Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection and didn't even ask for that.
That's not a challenging interview. I mean, like a challenging interview with like Donald Trump. I agree that first off, Donald Trump is the most boring interviewee. He dodges every question. It's so predictable. The only interesting interview I saw with him was Theo Vaughn's, where he briefly talked about like his brother was an alcoholic. I didn't know that Donald Trump had an older brother to begin with that was an alcoholic, and it's like, oh, there's a person here. That's interesting. Everything else is just dodging and shit. And like
but the only reason why he's boring to be interviewed is because nobody actually interviews him. They just want him to walk him through the talking points every time.
Sure. Well, I do think there is something to be said about. I mean, I agree. There's like a bunch of things that I think Joe could have pushed him way harder. I mean, even if you're not on this camp, like I would have liked to him.
Hold on, wait. You're doing it right now by saying that. There are things that Joe Rogan could have pushed him way harder on. It's not that. It's that Joe Rogan could have just pushed him at all on anything. He didn't really push him on anything.
I mean, I'll be honest, I fell asleep halfway through. I was on a plane when I was listening to it, so I don't remember the whole thing. I remember the first 30 minutes, he just dodged the question.
Exactly, yeah, he asked him over and over again, like, what was it like being president on day one? The bed was big.
Okay, yeah. But I think it could be the case that the reason that Joe's platform is successful to begin with is precisely because he doesn't set it up as an adversarial interview. I would agree. First off, the critique that Joe Rogan just is a chameleon and just basically adopts to whatever his guest is, whether they're left or right. That's a common critique and one I share. It's frustrating to hear him not challenge all kinds of stupid shit. He does challenge
but his his guest list over the past year has leaned pretty heavily like big conservative or centrist, who are all conservative type people, right? And then the left-wing people who are really like, we all knew nobody was surprised that Tulsi Gabbard became a Republican. Nobody was surprised. There wasn't a single human being that was surprised. RFK endorsed Donald Trump?
Okay, I didn't see that coming.
For which one?
For RFK, I would not have guessed prior that he was going to join the Trump campaign.
Would you? Well, but
I could see him. Actually, I don't know. I actually don't recall what I thought at the time. I remember being surprised.
Well, like if your choice is between that or him just remaining independent, then maybe. But he was never joining. He was never joining Biden or Harris, right?
Okay. Well, here's a perfect example, like RFK. Because like I think you are analyzing things at the level of like mechanics and like you're talking about the media ecosystem and stuff. All of that's relevant for sure. But there's a deeper issue, which is like the ideological, psychological dispute of just the underlying issues. So like I'll bring this up as an example. I don't really get stuck in this example, but like the whole what is it? Kamala's for they them, Biden's for you, or Trump is for you ad or whatever. What you know, talking about that ad?
Yep.
Yeah, like on Pod Save America, they said like that ad's moved people like 2.5 points. It was like one of the most effective ads. Yep. I saw that ad and I thought this is a ridiculously stupid ad. But you know, in hindsight, apparently it's because I'm close to this. I'm kind of immersed in the online political realm, so it's like I'm like this won't convince anybody. But then I step back and go, geez, yeah, I guess people who've never seen this, if they hear Kamala saying something crazy about illegal immigrant sex changes or whatever. It's like, okay, that apparently has sway with people because that taps into a deeper underlying kind of psychological problem that people have.
Yeah, but you have to
that
keep...
is less about the right-wing media sphere.
No. That's you got it completely backwards. But I'm sympathetic to why you have it completely backwards, because I used to as well. Because we think it's not about the media sphere, it's about these deeper ideas. But listen to what you just said. What are these deeper ideas being prodded by? By the right-wing media sphere. You're literally talking about a Trump campaign attack ad. And that's where these ideas are coming from. And it's the idea that the conservatives can set the tone so much. Why was so much of the attack on Kamala Harris successful when she spent basically no time at all talking about trans people, DEI, woke stuff?
She never disavowed it, and the mainstream left has been pushing it for the last 10 years.
Yeah, but when we say
Joe Biden in the State of the Union talked about protecting trans kids.
That's fine, but that's one thing that he said among 4 State of the Unions or whatever. Okay, so
okay,
but hold on, but you say they haven't disavowed it, but like even if you disavow it, what you think they're going to drop that? Oh no, she disavowed it. How many times have they said she wants to take all of your guns over and over and over again? Right? Like it doesn't matter.
Correct. Trump disavowed white supremacists, and they still to this day repeat the lie.
Well, Trump didn't really disavow white supremacists, though. That was the issue, right?
Do you want to play the clip?
We can if you want to. Do you want to also look at the Proud Boys' response on Parler after he said it? Where both of the leader people tweeted, "We hear you loud and clear, standing by," and then they went on to Signal, and then they went on Signal, and then they started plotting to do their thing on January 6th, and they were the first people that broke into the Capitol. We can go through that if you want. Yeah.
Hold on. There's 2 different things. Okay. Number one, I'm talking about the Charlottesville one, which
I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
No. You're talking about when he said "stand back" and "stand by" in his debate with Biden.
Yes, when they asked him to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they said, "Will you condemn the Proud Boys?" And he started stumbling. He was like, "Stand by and stand back."
Yeah.
We talked about this last time. You and I.
Yeah.
I think that hurt him. Like, why on earth would you not just straight up disavow the white supremacists?
Good question. Wait, why do you think he didn't?
Because he's an incompetent fool.
Okay. Or he enjoys support from those people and he wants to hold on to it. He doesn't want to say anything to alienate any part of his voter base ever, right?
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Kamala switched her messaging on Palestine and Israel depending on what state and what demographic was there. So it's like, of course, politics is you pander to whoever.
Hold on. Did she switch her message based on who she was talking to? Or are you talking about the different campaign ads that were run by the exact same PAC saying that she switched her message?
I'm talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong on this. My understanding was Kamala Harris had 2 different lines of messaging. One was like very pro-Palestine in Michigan and I think Minnesota maybe, and then more pro-Israel in other states.
So what you're referring to is, I think it was the PAC that Elon Musk funded. They were running ads having her taking 2 contrary positions, depending on if they were showing it in.
It was not the Democrats running this ad that had to.
No, what would her?
I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be spewing misinformation.
Yeah, no, that is what happened. But let's just think. What would her contrary messaging be?
Problematic.
Yeah, it is problematic. Yes, but it's the conservatives doing it. They're even in your mind, right? It's a conservative attack ad that you're thinking like, this is what Kamala Harris thinks. This is exactly what I'm talking about. How much of Trump do you think about that has to do with left-wing stuff? Like, how much of Trump's agenda or how much of your opinion of Trump is set by what the left says about him? Nothing. In fact, I bet if we were to dig into it, if I would have asked you before I just said that, you would be telling me all these things the left says about Trump. That's not true. It's not okay that they call him a Nazi. It's not okay that they call him a fascist. It's not okay, right? You'd be fighting against all of it. But then when it comes
he is a proto-fascist.
Okay, well, then that's great that you're unique there. But 99% of people would fight against all the characterizations.
Listen, you're not talking to 99% of people. Okay, Jesse. You're talking to the bottom 1%. But the broader point is it's like the reason I even brought this up was like the transgender thing. It's like my opinion is that adults should be absolutely free to pursue whatever body modification surgery they want. And I believe my understanding is the studies clearly demonstrate that if you have gender dysphoria as an adult and you do the surgeries, those have long-term positive outcomes because we have studies on adults. That is the exact opposite for children. There's zero shred of evidence whatsoever that any type of significant medical intervention, like surgeries or hormone replacement therapy, has positive long-term effects because no study is ever longer than 5 or 10 years or something like that, and a lot of the regret manifests 5-10 years later. So, in my mind, the common sense messaging is, of course, adults can do what they want, kids can't.
Why wouldn't the common sense messaging in a country, especially when conservatives on the other end of this, why wouldn't the common sense messaging be the medical evidence for this is still questionable? So this is a decision that
It's garbage. It's not just questionable.
It's questionable, right? It's not like we know for a fact it doesn't work or help at all. It's just it's still a new area of research, right?
No, and I'm only saying that this is one of the few areas where I've spent time looking at dozens of studies. I can say with confidence I've never seen a single one. Now, I'm not an expert.
Hold on. Do you agree that do you agree that trans people are real? Like trans people can be trans and hormones can increase patient outcomes or whatever? I'm not trying to get you on some transphobic
for adults.
Okay. Why wouldn't it be true then if they started as children?
For kids? Because it's like 80 or 90% desist later on.
Yes. So then there's a 10 or 20% that benefit, right? So then the question is can you target them like accurately in childhood, right?
No, no. The answer is you can't. We have no way of knowing, and most of these are not even. And I'm not even against it being part of like clinical trials, like monitored clinical trials where it's studied and like the outcomes are followed up with. That's not how it is right now. It's like if you go get your wisdom teeth removed, you're not part of a clinical trial. You just get the surgery and they let you go away.
Sure, but I mean, like patient outcomes are still
mutilation bullshit.
Patient outcomes are still followed, right? When they do it. So, why wouldn't you leave this to be a choice between?
Okay, all right.
Wait. Why wouldn't there just be a choice between the parents, the children, and the doctor? Right.
For the same reason we ban gay conversion therapy. Why shouldn't parents be allowed to send their child to a gay conversion?
Because there's absolutely zero evidence whatsoever that anybody has been converted from a gay conversion therapy thing.
Really? Is that true? There's no anecdotal evidence?
We're not talking about anecdotal. You admitted that. Hold on. Are there adults that can be gay converted? No. There are trans people who are adults that can take HRT and be successful. And that those same people, if they were identified as kids, could be successful, right? So it's just a matter of can you identify them as children? That seems to logically follow. I don't know how the same as gay conversion therapy.
Okay. There's, and I don't. I'm happy to have we can pull up the studies at some point. Okay. I would want to do more preparation for this.
Sure.
I've talked about this for a few years, and I've asked repeatedly. I asked Vosh's audience. I asked everyone at your chat right now. Send me one study at all that shows that surgeries on children.
Wait. Surgeries or hormone replacement therapy?
Or hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
Show me a long-term study that demonstrates that these have positive outcomes on children, and long-term meaning. This is the problem. What is the delay between smoking cigarettes and getting lung cancer?
Like
20 some years,
50 years or something. I don't know.
Okay, so the idea. There's a variety of different things to talk about. Let's just the broader point that I'm making is that at minimum, the people who say if you're against puberty blockers for children or hormone replacement, you're a Nazi or you're a fucking bigot. Like if you have any resistance against that, you're a terrible person. You're against civil rights. We agree that that's too far, right? That would be.
I'm not saying. Hold on. I'm not saying that would. Yes, I agree that those people are retarded. Okay. All I'm saying is that it seems like trans stuff is real, at least in adulthood. And so if parents want to make the decision to pursue something with a doctor or whatever, then I mean, I think they probably should have that option available to them. They should have that right. To compare that to gay conversion therapy is crazy, and it's even crazier.
There's as much evidence for gay conversion therapy as there is for successful gay conversion therapy in children.
Okay, that's just not true.
Successful intervention.
That's not true. Even if I were to take your stat, which I don't even think is right, even if I were to take your stat that 80% desist, you're telling me that there was evidence that 20% of people were successfully converted from homosexuality? Like even taking your own stat, it would debunk what you're saying. Just logically it would follow.
Look, I'm happy that let's schedule a conversation sometime, and we will simply evaluate the claim. The evidence for gay conversion therapy is as much. Whatever we just.
Do you think that for the conservatives that are sure,
absolutely that is the case.
Okay. Do you think
that why all these countries are backtracking on it?
Okay. I don't know if that's true, but they're backtracking from some of the recommendations they made, which is fine, by the way. It's okay if science figures stuff out and people change their recommendations over time. I'm okay with science updating. Well, that's all okay.
I guess.
Do you think the same people that are advocating this are the same people that are saying they're not vaccinating their children at all anymore? Do you think there's consistency in those two positions?
In what two positions?
That people can say, so Nick Merckx, I guess, tweeted out the other day.
They're not vaccinating their kids?
Yeah, he's not getting any vaccinations for their children.
That's as That's as stupid as giving your kids puberty blockers because they say they're a girl after.
Okay. Probably dumber than that, though, right? Because we have way more evidence that vaccines are effective, especially at least some of them, versus.
Let me ask you a question. So you would agree, just broadly here, like let's say we're just talking about messaging here. You agree that you agree with the statement, generally speaking, vaccines are safe and effective?
Yes.
Would you agree with the statement that generally speaking, puberty blockers are safe and effective?
No.
Okay.
Insofar as why am I? Hold on, wait. Wait.
Go ahead.
It's a question of magnitude, right? The evidence for vaccines is overwhelming. The evidence for when is like the best time to prescribe puberty blockers or engage with a child, and with the assumption that they are biologically trans and need medical interventions, we're still like out to lunch on this one. And we know that there are trans adults, and we know
out to lunch on this one.
Okay.
So
hold on, let me just bullet point these in. So you agree that trans adults exist, right?
Yeah, of course.
But you think that it is impossible. There is no possible way we will ever at any point in time discover if they would have been trans 4 years earlier. That's impossible. Not even worth studying. We'll never be able to know that.
For an individual, no, of course not.
Okay. I don't know how you could ever come to that conclusion, but
okay, I'll give you an example of you agree that after 18 an adult should be able to have sex with anyone they want, right?
No.
Not anyone they want. And any other adult.
Yeah, almost got me there. Almost got me.
Yes. You agree that after 18 an adult should be able to have sex with any other consenting adult,
like
correct?
Legally or morally? I mean, I think broadly speaking, I'm going to say yes, but I mean, it depends on what you're going to ask me here. You could trap me in a few ways, but
I'm going to ask, would you deny that there are people who, when they were 13, 14, or 15, had sex with adults, and then they claim the people that had sex with adults when they were 13, 14, or 15 themselves claimed they were fine and it didn't harm them? Because I know for a fact those people exist. I've talked to them.
Yeah, of course.
So just because there are exceptions, like, well, this thing could happen, and it is possible that an individual could, engage in sex with an adult when they're 13, and it could theoretically happen that they're not permanently scarred for life, doesn't mean the law should be anything other than it's completely fucking wrong to do it.
Sure, but there are three huge issues with this.
Let's start with one.
So the first huge issue is that it might be impossible at the time to ever ascertain if a person has a full understanding of the long-term effects, or that it can't be mapped out of the long-term effects of doing a premarital sex act with somebody else who's incentivized to take advantage of them, right? So that's number one.
Okay.
So the analogy or the analog, I guess, to trans stuff is that maybe a kid doesn't understand, I guess, what like hormones can do to them for the rest of their life.
Fertile for the rest of their life.
Yeah, but then the question is what is there to be gained outcome-wise from the 13-year-old doing hormones versus the 13-year-old that wants to have sex with an adult? If a 13-year-old wants to have sex with an adult really, 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 really badly, but we say, sorry, you can't do that, it's immoral, it's illegal, or whatever.
Yeah, wait till you're 18.
Yeah. Nothing bad happens.
Same thing for kids.
But wait, nothing bad happens. Do we agree with that, right? Nothing bad happens, right?
Well,
to the child who doesn't get to fuck the adult, right? Nothing bad happens, right? But for the trans person, there are bad things that happen. That's the issue. There's a ticking time clock on when you can start these things, right? That's the issue. So that's a huge difference, right?
Okay, I would say that's irrelevant. I would say to the point I'm making, it's fundamentally irrelevant because we agree, because the law should still be such that you make the law for the general population, not because there are exceptions to the law.
Well, hold on. But then the second huge issue that you have is it's a bit of a gotcha, but there literally are exceptions to your law, right? Like close in age sex laws allow like a 16-year-old to fuck a 19-year-old or a 17-year-old to fuck a 20-year-old. So there literally are close in age exceptions.
Sure.
Yeah. So there are exceptions in the law built around like these age differences here. So I mean, the third one is that like
that's why I said I'm okay with clinical trials for children. Legally I'm okay with it.
Morally, okay, sure. So then let's say that all the trans stuff wasn't like a first line, but like a parent had the opportunity to opt into, do you want to try an experimental treatment if your child you feel like they're trans or whatever? Like, is that something you'd be opposed to? Should a child and a doctor have a right to do that? Or
I think that can be done with reasonable regulation. Yes, strict regulation, strict outcomes, strict methodologies. Fine, potentially. I think it's completely off the rails now. But
Okay.
yeah, in theory, that would be like I could be happy in a world.
Okay.
The whole reason I brought this up, and I'll just go with the extreme example. Okay, it's like because this is how the human mind works. It's like the 13-year-olds getting their breast cut off. That there's no exception whatsoever in a million years that I'm ever going to tolerate that for the purposes of curing
Sure,
gender dysphoria,
SRS is way, that's like third trimester, day, whatever abortions, but
okay,
sure.
fair enough. But we agree that is an extreme example, but it does happen.
I'm sure it does, yeah, and it's probably not okay. It's probably like, my guess is single digits or something. It's probably very, very, very rare that this happens.
Thousands.
Thousands of girls are getting their breasts chopped off before they're 18.
The total amount of double mastectomies done on people prior to age 18, it's certainly in the thousands now.
Like in the past, 100 years, or
in the past, I think 5 to 10 years. Somebody fact checked me on it.
Double mastectomy in United States rates.
I should have a Google Doc, shouldn't I have?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you do? And other people? They have a Google Doc with all their sources?
Yeah, I try to, yeah.
That's exactly where I thought the conversation was going to go.
You're good. Regardless of what I find, though, if it is,
Well,
if it is in the okay, I'm looking, but if it is in the hundreds, I would say you probably shouldn't do this. Would be my guess, right? You probably shouldn't do this, right? I would agree with you.
Okay, why wouldn't you? You probably shouldn't do this. Okay, that's a separate thing.
The reason I'm saying you probably shouldn't do this is because I might say, like, let's say I do this. I could say, you absolutely should never do this. This is a horrible thing. And then somebody emails me and they're like, oh, well, actually, if you look at outcomes for girls that are 17 that do this, it's like 98% positive. And I'm like, oh, okay, well.
Okay, what? Okay, there's like 4 different roads we can go down here.
Okay.
Just one thing. The whole argument again about, like you said, nothing bad happens if we don't do it. It's like, because there are exceptions. It's like, why don't we apply the same logic to gay conversion therapy?
Because wait, nothing bad happens if you don't do it. There are bad things if you go to gay conversion therapy. What do you mean?
I know, but I'm saying there are exceptions that you can identify as, or
I'm not aware of there being like exception. Like if it was the case, for instance,
hold on, there are absolutely people that self-describe having gone to gay conversion therapy.
Yeah, but I'm not talking like 0.01%. If it was the case that 10
I don't know what the percentage is. We don't study it because it's illegal.
We did study it. That's why it's illegal. It's because it didn't work. If there was if there was 10 to 20% of people that converted after gay conversion therapy, I'd say it might be worth researching more. Maybe, right?
Maybe this is the positive and negative side of discussing with you, because the point I was originally making. It's my fault as well for going too deep into it. The broader point of it's tribalism. The left and the right, it's tribalism. It's like there are people who said, like if you're against a gender affirming care for children, that makes you a Nazi, fascist, terrible human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's bad. I agree with that, right? Do we agree that's bad? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And I would say the right, many people on the right saw that, and their psychological reaction was, fuck this.
Okay, sure.
I'm voting for whoever's against that.
That's fine. Okay. Do you agree? So we agree with that. Okay. So here's some things we agree with. Okay. This is why I'm going to make the argument that the media environment needs to change. Okay. So we agree that some people on the left, especially in the media sphere, so a lot of your Twitter, your crazy like YouTube shows, a lot of these people were crazy about some of the trans stuff, called people Nazis, fascists, LGBT haters, homophobic, transphobic, whatever, for not supporting it, and that people on the right got upset about that. Correct? We agree with that, right?
Sure.
Okay. What do you think is going to have a larger negative effect on society going forward? Conservatives not trusting vaccines at all, or 1,000 trans surgeries on women?
Conservatives not trusting vaccines at all.
Okay. Why is it that conservatives were allowed to have such strong feelings about the left's position on trans stuff, but we basically have completely given up or abandoned in the mainstream conversations about how the right is like vaccine and medical skeptic now.
Is that true? I don't.
Yes.
That's framed. Really?
Yes.
The left has given up attacking people for being anti-vax?
Yes. This is never spoken about in mainstream media, like to a serious
Maybe in
degree.
the media sphere you consume. I mean, we're all in a bubble, so I don't know.
Which media sphere do you consume where the anti-vaxxing of the right is like a...
I don't know. My hunch is that, like, if Candace Owens tomorrow says, I'm cutting out anyone in my life who vaccinates their kids, I suspect there would be people on the left who would take that clip and say, look how crazy the right is.
Candace Owens literally says we didn't go to the moon anymore. So I don't know about cutting people out who've been vaccinated, but they are absolutely like anti-vaxxers. It's just like it's almost like... Of
course, yes. It's terrible. We're going to have measles come back and
yeah, but like this isn't part of the conversation. This is so much not a part of the conversation that RFK is the cabinet appointment nomination or whatever.
I'm happy about that.
Okay, that's great, right? So like that's an issue because my guess is that if Biden or Kamala had tried to appoint somebody who was pro-trans minor surgery, that would be all you'd be talking about. But RFK, who is like a pharma skeptic, vaccine skeptic individual, you're like, oh, that's okay.
About a year ago, I debated Vaught. We didn't debate about this topic, but it came up in the debate I had with him, and that I haven't followed it for some time because. And again, maybe I should genuinely have a Google Doc ready to go because it might be important if my job is to convince others, although I'm not so sure that's my job. It's to tell you what I actually believe. I'm confident right now that if I spent the next hour going through what is the current state of countries rolling back, saying this was a problem, the fundamental studies that said gender-affirming care for children was good, ended up being flawed, withdrawn, all this different stuff, I'm relatively confident that I'd be able to provide that evidence fairly easily. But I don't have it at hand, so it's... The onus is on me.
Hold on. Wait. I need to stake out the exact claims. Okay.
Okay.
What you just said is true, and I've never disagreed with it. Okay. The support for children undergoing things like HRT or even SRS was greater a few years ago than it has been recently. And the guidelines for treating children with diagnosed gender dysphoria have rolled back across most of the Western world. That is fundamentally, though, a different claim than what you were making, which is we'll never be able to know if adults could be trans or whatever, right? That was the claim that I was defending, is that it's probably worth researching more, and if parents want to pursue it as an option, that might be the case. But there has been a relaxation or rolling back of some of the previous guidelines for children identified with gender dysphoria. That is true. I've never disagreed with that.
Fair enough. The underlying point that I'm just broadly making is even though it's a very small number of children, and even if it is thousands, it's still, yes, I agree, absolute terms, very small number of children getting utterly mutilated, okay? The number of unarmed black men being killed by police in a given year is less than like 30. And that set off the entire country during Black Lives Matter in a mass psychosis. So what does that tell us? It tells us that human psychology is such, especially in the social media era, you don't need anything more than a few anecdotal examples to connect to a much broader, deeper issue that people resonate with. Like, it is the case that in school, like I know public teachers in Chicago public school teachers who were taught that sex is a social construct, not gender. The line used to be gender and sex are separate. But no, the new line is sex is a social construct. That's why we say sex assigned at birth rather than sex observed at birth. So the line keeps moving. Parents see this in their everyday schools of like, why is my kid coming home saying that sex is assigned at birth and these, women can have penises and stuff like that? It's like, yeah, they're not getting surgery, but the parents see that at a low level. Then they see the one example of a child getting their breast cut off that catalyzes the underlying kind of psychological, anger that's brewing there. And then that turns into a mass movement, which is exactly what BLM was. You have black people.
I understand what you're saying. And BLM, some of the stuff on BLM was based around bad stats. I definitely would agree with that. But there's a whole history of stuff related to black people, related to African Americans, related to police and everything else in this country. And it was probably driven a lot by the fact that, and apparently the whole world has forgotten this, that we were all also in fucking COVID lockdown. So the world was just fucking crazy and stupid as well. Okay. Not to say that there wouldn't have been the same protests or riots or whatever. Anyway, it's still possible that there could have been some extent, right? But there was probably more meat to that, even if some of the BLM stuff was really retarded. Trust me, I know, I criticize a lot of it. There was definitely more meat to that than the trans panic that the conservatives are constantly inciting. And also, even if I was...
What do you mean there was more meat to it? Like,
as in, like, there was more real stuff to address there relating to the disparate outcomes.
I'm not even necessarily disputing that. That could be the case. But psychologically, also, it carried the same weight.
Sure, but even if I grant you all of that, which I think I partially would, if we step back, think about like what the two examples that you brought up and think about how they exist in the current media lexicon. BLM was a horrible thing that was over-exaggerated, which was the fault of liberals. And the trans panic stuff, that's a horrible thing that exists now, and it's the fault of liberals. So you've given an example of conservatives exaggerating a few cases and liberals exaggerating a few cases, but both of them are blamed on liberals. What the fuck?
What? I don't know. What do you mean blamed? But who's blaming who? I don't even know what you mean by that.
In the media sphere,
I'm not
liberals had to disavow all the BLM shit. We heard about the Summer of Love, the riots, all of this. It was like an unpopular thing. They defund the police. Trump brought it up a ton, right? We heard about this a ton. And now for the trans stuff, it's also the fault of liberals, right? Everything is blamed on liberals, and liberals have to apologize and seek forgiveness for literally every single thing they do.
Has the left been disavowing the trans shit? I just saw a clip of that one guy in CNN who said boys shouldn't play with girls, and the guy's like, "I can't believe you're calling them boys."
I don't think the left figures have been disavowing it yet, but you said it yourself. The institutions are walking back on some of the recommendations. They're following the science. I believe it was the NCAA. Didn't they change their guidelines on who could participate in women's sports? You've seen different medical institutions across different countries, even Scandinavian ones. Like, yeah, so that's changing slowly. Yes.
Yeah, but as a result, in part at least, by conservative pressures, so that's an example of that working and being good.
I don't know if that's as a result of conservative pressure or that's a result of just more research being posted and people changing their ideas on things. I can't prove this, but I would say it's very logical to believe that the insane pressure in media campaigns from conservative media demonstrating the insane shit with like double mastectomies, for example, as the extreme example, caused a lot of these walkbacks to occur. I mean, you can say that with literally no evidence, but I mean, the things that came out were longitudinal studies and I think there was a really big one. I wish I could remember it. It was in the UK, right? There was a really big one that came out. I don't know if this is a big lit review or a big meta-analysis that was basically saying like, we actually don't feel like there's good evidence to support children for the CAST study or whatever. I don't know if that was a study, if that was a publication by the CAST report. Yeah, that was a big one that changed it. That was probably more instrumental than conservative fear-mongering all day.
It's certainly both, of course.
Well, can you think of a single large-scale, incorrect piece of fake news that the conservatives have built themselves around over the past decade that they have walked back or changed at all?
I don't know, not off the top of my head.
Anything about vaccines? No. Anything about COVID? No.
Probably not. Conservatives account for 80 million people, and there's different factions within conservatism.
No, there's not. So. All of them hardcore support the main party lines. Sorry, hold on. Do you want me to? I can name some. Wait, hold on. Wait, I can name some, and I could ask you if you can think of a single conservative. Can you think of a single conservative that enthusiastically speaks positive about mRNA vaccines? One, conservative or centrist. And I'm going to run through 10 different things, and we'll see if we can find one. Yeah.
No, I'll preemptively say no to all.
Okay. There you go. Okay.
But my inability to provide you evidence offhand doesn't prove anything other than I could be ignorant, which you and I both know that's certainly true. But but this is a different thing I do want to get into. Okay. The broader point.
Actually, if anything, I'll say that you're probably abnormal in that you consume more media than the average American. My whole point for the start of this conversation was what needs to change is the media environment. And I feel like your answers here are literally reinforcing all of that. The problems that you think you have, the issues that you think you care about, these are just things that have been presented in front of you. And these are the things that are occupying your mind. It's because of what you've been shown and what other people have told you to care about. It's not that you actually care about these more than other things. Because you even said the vaccine issue is a bigger issue than the trans stuff. But like if I were to go through your Twitter, if I were to look at your prior conversations, if I were to do any of this, my guess is you probably talked about the trans stuff more than the vaccine stuff. And there's a whole bunch of issues like this.
Actually, I mean, you could... Someone in your audience can look me up on Twitter. I'd be curious. I don't even know what I tweet. I've in the last year in particular, I've kind of moved away from the trans stuff because, like I said, in my mind, the CAST report, you gave an example, the writing on the wall. Fair enough. The reason I brought that up was to get to that underlying issue of, in my mind, the way that people work psychologically is whether or not trans stuff or trans kids, unarmed black men being shot by police, or vaccines, like whether or not any of that in, I don't know, from an objective point of view, is more significant than others, or is more significant in its effect than other things, is irrelevant to the psychological effect that it has. Now, I would say, you're right, the media landscape on top of that is, that Joshua Citarella, I think, told you in the podcast, like technology and politics are the same thing, right? Technology's collapsed into politics. And I think that is an act. Like social media and the collective unconscious are
there's a much larger overlap than there used to be. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I do agree. And so maybe I'm drawing a poor distinction between saying it's media on top and stuff on the bottom. I guess like here's an example.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to do a better job of not. Yeah, I'm not trying to debate so much anymore. I'm just trying to genuinely tell you what I think and get your buy-in. And fair enough. And if I'll need to bring some evidence next time for some of the claims
that's fine.
I'm making.
But even what you're saying there, like, I'm not here to debate, 99% of people that say I'm not here to debate it are going to just basically shill every single right-wing talking point, and then I'm just supposed to consider these like we're having an equivalent conversation when we're not. Because you're not going to tell me a single negative thing about conservatives, and you're probably not going to tell me a single incredibly positive thing about liberals. And then we're supposed to say, I'm not here to debate. And it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is the point? Like
that's the most wrong thing you've said today.
Okay.
Because I argue, like, for example, Andrew Wilson. If I was talking to Andrew Wilson right now, it'd be the exact opposite thing. I'd be making fun of the fact that, fuck it. Well, it turns out a lot of women voted for Trump. Maybe we shouldn't repeal the 19th. The Bible is your literal text and whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it'd be an entirely different conversation. You happen to be more left-wing than me. So I obviously appear more right-wing compared to you. But that's solely a function of there's only two of us talking. So, and my question, I was going to ask this is like, because I think you said something like Lex Friedman is hard right. You said he was hard right.
I don't know if I said he's hard right. I would have to go look at the context.
Sure
I don't live in quotes. I'm sure that if you look at the conversation I was having, what I'm probably saying is that he's fully 100% supportive of the right candidate, which every single centrist and right-wing media outlet is.
Well, I guess if you vote for a candidate, then that makes that you're tech on paper.
Nope, that's not what I'm saying. I'll say it again. I'm saying that they were 100% hard supporting the candidate. Okay,
you verbatim said Lex Friedman is hard right. So I'm fair enough. I'm not sticking you to that. But what you're saying now about like what I just said.
What if you want we can find the quote. If you want we can find the quote where this came from. You can tell me where you think you read this from. But like what I'm saying, do you think I'm saying like Lex Friedman is a fiscally conservative, I don't even know what the right wing position, like Catholic Christian, like morally up, like what am I saying when we're listening to the?
I don't have it on hand.
Okay, but if you had to guess, what do you think I'm saying? Wait, but what do you guess I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, right? Everybody here knows what I'm saying. Everybody knows what I'm saying. I'm not saying that like, oh yeah, like he would have been. Okay.
Because I get like if electorally, if someone votes for Trump, it doesn't matter if they're a fanatic voter or a last minute independent. They're functionally the same. So in practical terms, yeah, like that's fair. But like, you definitely have called Lex Friedman. Fair enough. I don't have the evidence on hand. Mm-hmm. That's fair. But the broader point is, and I forget what you said earlier that made me think of it, but like, you seem to be making a mistake by lumping all people who would have voted for Trump, going back to the very beginning that we talked about, under the title of conservative or right wing. Like Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk voted for the same guy, but with slightly different circumstances, and maybe, I don't know, slightly, whatever. With some different circumstances, Rogan could have voted for Bernie, right? Like if we go back 4 years or whatever, if Bernie was slightly younger, if you had a...
We're not talking about the last election, though, but sure.
Sure, but I'm using this as a thought experiment to illustrate the underlying point I'm making.
Yeah, I know, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to tie this to my media example, because what you're going to tell me is you have people with a whole wide different set of beliefs who just because they support Donald Trump, you're calling them right-wing, and that's not fair. And then what I'm going to say is, go ahead.
Well, it's not that it's not fair. It seems to be you seem to be making a unnecessary mistake because you're lumping them all together and then ignoring important distinctions that could be exploited.
Yep.
To facilitate a...
No, that's not true. I understand what you're saying, but this is the difference, right? The problem is that when people are talking to the left, they will endlessly obfuscate and differentiate all of these right-supporting people. Oh, no, they're different. They believe this, they believe that, they believe... But when you go over to the right, They know the game, and they know exactly what's going on. Even if they don't know it cognitively, they know it intellectually. What you're saying about, oh no, all these people have different beliefs and opinions. Nobody on the right fucking believes that. Because if that was true, when Joe Rogan did give tepid support to RFK, all of them would have uttered the same like senseless bullshit that you're uttering now. They would have said, oh well, we're all different. We've got different beliefs, and Joe Rogan could have voted for Bernie Sanders. No, they don't do that. If you say, I don't know if I would vote for Joe Rogan, or I'm sorry, I don't know if Joe Rogan said, I don't know if I would vote for Trump, they're going to bully the fuck out of you until you do vote for him. They're not going to have all this, we're all different people with different beliefs bullshit that you're saying right now that I'm supposed to view them as. They're going to be one coherent group that is unified with their undying support for Trump.
Would you say Glenn Loury falls under that description?
Fuck. I spoke with him, I think, a couple months ago.
Like 2.5 hours, and it was the most civil conversation ever. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
You call conservatives
yeah, but it's
dumbasses
the issue,
all the time.
yeah, I have my Bridges show that I'm trying to figure out how I want to go forward with it. But the, I don't know. I would have to view more of his content. I'm not sure. But did he support Trump? Did he?
I looked it up. I looked up actually. I don't think he never publicly stated who he voted for, but there's like videos of him just defending Trump left and right, sort of in a devil's advocate way, but he's a black conservative. He literally said, on my gravestone, it'll say black conservative or something like that.
But hold on, just real quick. You you agree that while on the left, you want to say, well, all these people have different reasons. On the right, you agree that they religiously enforce devotion to the candidate, right?
On the right, they religiously enforce devotion to the candidate.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, that obviously that happened. What was the Kyle Rittenhouse one?
Yep.
Where they
bullied him and colted him in one night. Yeah.
That, okay, 100%. That's real.
Okay.
But then the question is, what percent of conservatives as such, which is like 90 million or 100 million people, can be described as that level of culty? It
doesn't matter. I'm just talking about the media apparatus. You agree? So you agree that it happens on the right? Wait, just real quick. We agree that it happens on the right, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
you agree there's nothing like that on the left, right?
No, certainly Trump's cult of personality was completely unique to the right compared to.
That's the thing that I want to change, right? Yeah. Because now when we're talking about doing interviews, again, to reiterate what I said before, Trump can run a whole media gamut on all these like shows, not be held accountable for anything, get glazed on everything, be able to launch attacks on other candidates. And now when Kamala has to do it, it's like, okay, well, fuck. I can't go to the far left because they fucking hate me because of the not being woke enough or not talking about trans issues enough or whatever, Palestine genocide. I can't, if I go to the right wing sphere, fuck me, it's going to be way harder than what Trump had. So I have like this small, narrow band of like center left people who are also going to be rough on me because they're so concerned about being called like Trump derangement syndrome people and being too biased. So like, you're fucked. The media environment is fucked.
I see what you're saying, and I do think that the what I said about technology collapsing into politics, which was what Joshua Citarella said. That justifies your like looking at it from a media lens more than I originally thought. So that's fair. But I guess okay, let's just, and we're in debate mode. I don't want to be in debate mode. I want to be more, because I rely on you to steelman, like for example, what we talked about last time with the Twitter file stuff. Another example I was going to give is Majid Nawaz. You were on a debate stage with Majid Nawaz, and they were talking about how like some vaccine shit got recalled. And he was like spewing it out. Maybe it might have been Majid Nawaz. But then you said, yeah, if you look at it, there was like lead in the vaccine or whatever, and it had to be recalled as some.
Oh, I think it had to do with mRNA vaccines that came from Japan, and there was a batch of one of them that got recalled, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, good. I'm glad. I'm never going to look into this shit. I haven't even brought evidence to talk to you, so I'm not looking into a deep level of evidence for these specific claims. So I rely on you to do a lot of the work for me, since you're here 12 hours a day, and I do trust you generally to get to the bottom of things. Mm-hmm. But on certain things, I'm more interested in trying to just understand how you're viewing things. Okay, like I said earlier, I'm glad RFK is. What is he? What did they say he's going to be? The head of
Health and Human Services.
See, I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what the fundamental distinction between that and like the FDA is. The reason. If I were to steelman RFK, certainly you agree that there's a serious chronic illness epidemic in this country. Yeah, like obesity
Sure.
rates, we spend
Yep.
more. Okay, you seemed already you're
I agree with it, but RFK wouldn't help her address it at all because he's a dipshit.
perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly possible. I agree with that. But again, I'm thinking more about like why did Trump win, and like why did a bunch of, like, for example, way more suburban moms voted for Trump than everyone thought they were. One of the hypotheses is, like, suburban moms care a lot about their kids' health, and that was such a Make America Healthy Again was kind of a focus thing. Chronic illness was never mentioned once by the Kamala Harris campaign, as far as someone said. Could be true, maybe not. But certainly was a focus of the Trump campaign. That's a very real issue. And I guess it's just like RFK, for better or worse, and probably worse, but no one else, there was not even a voice on the left that was calling out to the same degree. Fertilizers, all these different chemicals that are banned in Europe. I know it's a talking point on the left, which is why I think a lot of like otherwise left-leaning suburban moms and people voted for Trump. But it was not part of the campaign. So to me, that's an example of like, it's media ecosystem aside, you still need to have the right underlying message.
Yeah, but who even that wasn't even close to one of the larger motivating things for the election was
to make America healthy again?
Yeah, chronic health issues. Also, again, how do you even signal on shit like this when none of it is even real? Like, I remember conservative. How old are you again? Do you say this?
You want to guess?
31.
I'll be 28 in 2 weeks.
Okay. When Michelle Obama talked about making kids healthier for school lunches, conservatives basically fucking collectively killed themselves. It was like it was an international traumatic PTSD-inducing event for them. It was unfathomable. They lost their fucking shit over it. So the idea now that these same people suddenly are like massively bought into and caring about like health foods that we eat, like, bullshit. And even fucking RFK doesn't give a fuck because he saw him on an airplane eating fucking McDonald's 2 days ago. Okay, so like, what this is supposed to be now? And again, even just think about what you're saying. The Republicans are the ones that have to dictate like all the talking points. Like, Donald Trump himself said he didn't believe in exercise because he thought it wore down his fucking battery. You have a limited battery in your body, and these are the people that you want me to take seriously about exercise? Like, fuck that. That's retarded. No, I don't think Americans cared about this talking point. I don't think they gave a fuck about this at all. Some might point to it, but I don't believe it. And I don't think Kamala messaging or signaling on this, I don't think it would have done anything at all for her. I think it would have been.
Okay, that's fair. Like, if I'm being honest, I think you are vastly underestimating the degree. You've heard MAHA, right? Make America Healthy Again.
I
certainly saw that.
It might have been
everywhere.
a thing, but maybe I missed it. But
okay. See, now I'm even more suspicious that you are as much in a bubble as certainly other people, because I'm actually MAHA was okay. Well, I won't harp on it, but like, this is like Joe Rogan has people on all the time, certainly crazies like I don't know, is Russell Brand against vaccinating these kids? Probably. Like, you can obviously go too far on stuff, but like Callie Means and Casey Means, for example, like one is a Stanford surgeon and the other worked for like Pfizer or something like that. It's like they were on Tucker Carlson with like 6 million views. They were on Bill Maher the other day. It's like that was a whole major part of it. And I guess are you open to the fact that you might be like pretty wrong on this to the degree that which influenced the election?
No, I don't think so. All I do is I look at exit polls and stuff. I mean, sure. I didn't see health or anything. I thought it was like, what?
That's very JJ McCullough of you. JJ just gets he only looks at polls and stuff. He never. That's fair. I'm probably more schizo than you. You're probably more autist than I am. Where schizo is like, I'm trying to see the like what's happening in 5-10 years, like psychologically, with very little, like concrete evidence. It's all vibes based, and you're more you're probably more focused on I try to account for both. I know that the RFK Make America Healthy Again, I heard that a few times. I just don't know how like big of a part of the campaign. I think things like immigration and the economy and inflation, like stuff like this, were driving the American conversation more. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm in different parts. But and I'm not even saying that it was bigger than the economy, but I do think it was a bigger part. But I have no evidence. It's all vibes based. That's fair.
Okay.
I love Vivek Ramaswamy. I've listened to him a bunch. I've never heard him say anything that was incredibly stupid.
Okay.
Should I have a different opinion than I do?
I
think you said what, this was a while back. Again, I don't have evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But you said something like the litmus test for determining whether or not someone is a fucking moron is whether they like Vivek Ramaswamy. And I was like,
Was it
apparently I'm a
Vivek or
fucking
was
moron.
it RFK? It might have been Vivek too. Vivek to me just seemed like he was just an empty populist. He comes up and he says things that sound good, but there's like no empirical backing. There's no like historical backing. It just says things that sounds good, and that's it.
Well, fuck. That's sort of how I evaluate what you do. Is like you sound good on a lot of things, and then I say, well, he's probably right on things. I mean, I guess like.
Well, what do you think? Like, give me what's a solid policy proposal from Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah, so I listened to him on Andrew Schultz, one of the leading new media figures of the modern era. He wants to get rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah, that's fucking. So he's an idiot. Okay.
Okay, so why is that a bad policy?
What? Because one, broadly speaking, I think U.S. college level education is pretty successful. I think it's a huge driver of like better income earnings after graduation. We have elite universities that people from all over the world come to the United States to attend, and I haven't heard a single viable alternative suggested from any conservative that wants to eliminate the Department of Education.
Have you listened to any interviews with Vivek where he talks about this?
No. What is his alternative?
Well, again, I'd point out, like, don't call people so fucking stupid until you've listened to their whole point. Because I listen to it and it sounds good to me, but I genuinely don't know enough to be like, I'd like to have Destiny listen to this and tell me what's fucking wrong with this.
I don't have time to listen to every single insane fucking random person that has see, I just don't have the time to do it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
What was his suggested alternative or whatever?
He says you can the Department of Education's original purpose was to stop schools in the South from siphoning money away from black school districts and putting it in white school districts. That was the original purpose of the Department of Education. Now, what the department does is, I think it's like on average for a given school.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
The Department of Education, I'm fully admit, I could be totally wrong. The Department of Education is a federal level office that exists in the United States. Do they have impacts on funding for like elementary school and high school stuff?
According to Vivek, on average, 10% of a given public school, its funding comes from Department of Education.
Okay, 10%. But when you said a public school, is that colleges only, or is that also high school?
I think it's school. I think it's like K through 12. I don't know much.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so 10%. Okay, so, I'm just. Do you want to listen to a thing for like 3 minutes? We could just listen to him talk about this. Somebody linked me Okay, hold on. Can you hear this?
I want to know if I'm a fucking moron.
Can you sort of steelman the perspective of somebody that looks?
Does this audio come through for you, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
At a particular Department of Education, and are saying that the amount of pain that will be caused by closing it and firing 75% of people will be too much.
Yeah, so I go back to this question of mission, right? A lot of people who make arguments for the Department of Education aren't aware why the Department of Education was created in the first place.
Okay, so I will say, firstly, no, we can evaluate the argument, or we can evaluate what he's saying later, whether it being true or false. But I will say, firstly, why a thing was created doesn't speak to the efficacy or help us evaluate what it is now, right? That we can imagine things that were created for a nefarious purpose that now serve a really good purpose, right?
Planned Parenthood, perfect example. Right? Started by
if we believe, that it was made to kill black people, but we can imagine things that were created with a nefarious purpose in mind that are actually like incredibly beneficial now, right?
Indisputable fact about what's her name? Margaret Sanger?
Sure. No offense, but I don't trust any of the things you bring up without me reading them myself, but I don't know. But I'm just saying, regardless, it doesn't matter. Okay.
All right. Well,
okay. All right.
Yeah, I agree. Genetic fallacy, right?
Sure. Okay.
Who make arguments for the Department of Education aren't aware why the Department of Education was created in the first place, actually. So that might be a useful place to start, is that this thing was created. It had a purpose, presumably. What was that purpose? Might be at least a relevant question to ask before we decide what are we doing with it or not. What was the purpose of this thing that we created? It's not it to me seems like a highly relevant question, yet in this discussion.
So it's not relevant. So the fact that he's saying this means that I already know where we're going, and I already know the counter argument that I would give, but we'll see if he gets there. So the fact that he's saying this is so important, and he wants to get rid of it, means he's probably going to have a historical origination for it that is going to sound in modern day morally abhorrent. But my question would be, okay, well, it was founded for this purpose that you're saying is bad. Does it still do that thing that we agreed today is bad? If it does, then maybe I would agree. If it doesn't, then why are you even bringing this up? And is it even a good argument? But we'll see where he goes. That would be where my mind is going to immediately. But we'll see what he says, okay?
About government reform. It's interesting how eager people are to skip over that question and just to talk about, okay, but we got the status quo and it's just going to be disruptive, versus asking the question of, okay, this institution was created. It had an original purpose. Is that purpose still relevant? Is this organization at all fulfilling that purpose today? To me, those are some relevant questions to ask. So let's talk about that for the Department of Education. Its purpose was relevant at that time, which was to make sure that localities and particularly states were not siphoning dollars, taxpayer dollars, away from predominantly black school districts to predominantly white ones. And that was not a theoretical concern at the time. It was happening, or there was at least some evidence that was happening in certain states in the South. And so you may say you don't like the federal solution, you may say you like the federal solution, but like it or not, that was the original purpose of the U.S. Department of Education, to make sure that from a federal perspective, states were not systematically disadvantaging black school districts over predominantly white ones. However noble and relevant that purpose may have been 6 decades ago, it's not a relevant purpose today. There's no evidence today of states intentionally mapping out which are the black versus white school districts and siphoning money in one direction versus another. To the contrary, one of the things we've learned is that the school districts in the inner city, many of which are predominantly black, actually spend more money per student than other school districts for a worse result as measured.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if critiquing the history is necessary or not. It's probably not.
Probably is not.
It's probably not. It seems like the Department of Education was created in 1867. It's not even worth. It's not worth going over. But okay. But we'll keep listening. Okay. We'll look for the argument. Okay.
Evidence today of states intentionally mapping out which are the black versus white school districts and siphoning money in one direction versus another. To the contrary, one of the things we've learned is that the school districts in the inner city, many of which are predominantly black, actually spend more money per student than other school districts for a worse result as measured by test scores and other performance on a per student basis, suggesting that there are other factors than the dollar expenditures per school determining student success, and actually suggesting that even the overfunding of some of those already poorly run schools rewards them for their actual bureaucratic failures.
Okay, that's just an unbelievable logical fallacy. I am familiar empirically with the idea that just throwing more money at things doesn't necessarily make those outcomes better when it comes to education, but there are other really basic like statistical things that we can imagine are at play. So for instance, if I spend $10,000 on chemotherapy versus $1 million on chemotherapy, there might be very little difference in patient outcome, but that doesn't mean that I could just spend $0 on chemotherapy. There might be like thresholds at the top or bottom that significantly alter outcomes, number one. Number two, just because spending more money doesn't improve outcomes doesn't necessarily mean that when we spend more money, we're creating worse outcomes. Again, to go with the hospital example, my guess is the more money that you spend on a patient, probably the worse outcomes that patient has. But why? If I go to the hospital, they're probably spending what, $100 to take my wisdom tooth out, or $1,000 for a wisdom tooth extraction or whatever. But if I go in and I have like major surgery, that's probably way more expensive, but it's major surgery. I'm more likely to die. That's just one example of how what he's saying doesn't necessarily logically follow. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's wrong. He could go on to demonstrate why spending more money on a bureaucracy is like creating worse outcomes, but he needs to demonstrate that because what he said so far isn't a logical argument, right? You agree with me so far?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go on.
So against that backdrop, the Department of Education has instead extrapolated that original purpose of what was a racial equality purpose to instead implement a different vision of racial equity through the ideologies that they demand in the content of the curriculum that these public schools actually teach. So Department of Education funding.
So the federal government cannot dictate curriculums to school. So he might just be referring to colleges here. I'm not sure, but there is no federal national curriculum.
He gives an example of what he's talking about.
All right, we'll hear it.
I have listened to this clip.
Sure. Okay.
So federal funding accounts for about, giving you round numbers here, but around 10% of the funding of most public schools across the country. But that comes with strings attached. So in today's Department of Education, this didn't happen back in 1970, but it's happening today. Ironically, it's funny how these things change with the bureaucracies that fail. They blow oak smoke to cover up for their own failures.
Well, things could also just change because new problems arise in front of us and you have to confront and deal with like the idea that the bureaucracies expand or the bureaucracies are dealing with different issues today than they did in the past. This obviously, yes, we have different issues today in the past, but whatever. All right.
What happens with today's Department of Education? They effectively say you don't get that funding unless you adopt certain goals deemed at achieving racial or gender equity goals. And in fact, they also intervene in the curriculum where there's evidence of schools in the Midwest or in the Great Plains that have been denied funding because Department of Education funding, so long as they have certain subjects like archery. There was one instance of a school that had archery in its curriculum. I find that to be pretty interesting, actually. I think that...
Is he talking about like Title IX stuff? I wish he... Okay, do I want to look at the specific example?
We don't...
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean...
Well, because like...
We don't have
hold
to.
on. Well, there are... Because this is another issue that I have. I hate this guy so much. Thank you for reminding me why I hate this fucking guy so much. Things that he's saying are so broad that there are worlds where what he's saying could be so horrible, like, wow, this is a big problem, or things where what he's saying are like, well, this is actually good, I like this. So for instance, what he's saying right now, that like the federal government forces you to have certain equality things or whatever, and otherwise they'll pull your funding. Well, that could be a world where they're like, you have to teach critical race theory to first graders and tell them that they can be trans if they want to, right? And I'd be like, okay, well, this is really bad. But what if it's like,
Agreed.
but what if it's like Title IX stuff where it's like, oh, if you have, if you've got sports teams for men, you need to have equivalent sports teams for women, or like you can't discriminate against, you can't have race-based like adoption for students. You can't like say we want 10% black. Well, okay, I don't know if that's that bad. That's probably fine. We probably expect that from publicly funded things, right? So I would need more examples there. But it sounds like he's giving one about archery. Hold on.
Archery. There was one instance of a school that had archery in its curriculum. I find that to be pretty interesting, actually. I think you have different kinds of physical education. This is one that combines mental focus with physical aptitude. But hey, maybe I'm biased. Doesn't matter whether you like archery or not. I don't think it's the federal government's job to withhold funding from a school because they include something in their curriculum that the federal government deems inappropriate.
Okay, I have to look this one up. So federal government withhold funding archery school. Biden admin. Okay, fuck, we got a good Fox News articles. Okay. Biden admin withholding key funding for schools with hunting and archery programs. Biden leveling a direct attack on hunters' ability to pass down hunting to the newest generation. Okay, sorry. Biden administration is blocking key federal funding earmarked under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 for schools with hunting and archery programs. Okay. According to federal guidance circulated among hunting education groups and shared with Fox News Digital, the Department of Education determined that under the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, BSCA passed last year, school hunting and archery classes are precluded from receiving federal funding. The interpretation could impact millions of American children enrolled in such programs. Okay, so two huge problems right here. So one is, it sounds like this is going to be statutory interpretation from the federal government from a law passed by Congress. So this is a law passed by Congress, Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. So one, there's a law from Congress, so I wouldn't necessarily blame Biden. But then two, are they saying that they would pull funding from the entire school? Or are they just saying that the classes, just those classes themselves might not receive federal funding? Because that's a significantly different thing, right? Would you agree with that?
Maybe, sure.
Right, like let's say the federal government said we're also not going to fund like pottery gendered classes or some bullshit. Right, that's probably I don't know if right.
I would not want my federal tax dollars going to pottery.
Yeah, maybe that we probably don't want to fund every single thing that a school might have. However. Okay, so it's a negative for children. As a former educator of 30 plus years, I was always trying to find a way to engage students. You got every Fish and Wildlife trying to do this. According to organization, some of these schools have canceled. Okay, some of these schools have already canceled plans to include archery or hunting education courses in the curriculum due to the Education Department guidance. In June 2022, the SCA was passed with large majorities in the House and Senate, meaning Democrats and Republicans. The push passed the bill, which broadly seeks to promote safer, more inclusive, and positive school environments. When the education came after mass shootings, the legislature includes an amendment listing prohibited uses of federal school funding. That amendment prohibits the ESEA funds from helping provide any person. Okay, so part of this legislation, that amendment prohibits the ESEA funds from helping provide any person with a dangerous weapon or to provide training in the use of a dangerous weapon. So it sounds like this was a law that was passed by Congress that includes this provision. The federal government's job is to interpret that law and then enforce it appropriately. So I see that. However, it looks like Congress also passed another law later on that amended this, Protecting Hunting Heritage and Education Act, H.R. 5110. And it seems like this is a thing that they introduced and they passed literally just to amend this particular thing, right? So summary, this use authorizes the use of federal elementary and secondary education funds to purchase or use dangerous weapons for purposes of providing students with educational instruction or educational enrichment activities such as archery, hunting, other shooting sports, even shooting sports or culinary arts. Okay, cool. Okay, so
elite.
Okay. So let's back up.
I did archery in gym for what it's worth in high school.
Okay, so let's back up now with this and let's listen to what Vivek says again. Hold on.
Planes that have been denied funding because Department of Education funding, so long as they have their own failures. What happens with today's Department of Education? They effectively say you don't get that funding unless you adopt certain goals deemed at achieving racial or gender equity goals. And in fact, they also intervene in the curriculum where there's evidence of schools in the Midwest or in the Great Plains that have been denied funding because Department of Education funding, so long as they have certain subjects like archery. There was one instance of a school that had archery in its curriculum. I find that to be pretty interesting, actually. I think that.
So his presentation on here, the way that I'm hearing him present this, and unfortunately, I guess is one of the reasons I have to read so much today. Just hearing his summary here, I would never trust this guy to tell me a single true fact in the history of all of anything he would ever talk about. I wouldn't trust anything he says. The fact that he's not mentioning that this was a recent law passed by Congress that dictated in the law that funds can't go to things that enable students to train with weapons. The fact that this wasn't just a random rule that came from from the executive, but it came after a new law was passed by Congress, and that Congress even passed another law to change it. He makes it sound like, right, the takeaway here is that, like, wow, the Department of Education is just telling kids they can't even learn archery for no reason. That's evil and horrible. This is like just totally whatever. But sorry, we'll keep going. 2.5 minutes.
That I think you have different kinds of physical education. This is one that combines mental focus with physical aptitude. But hey, maybe I'm biased. Doesn't matter. Whether you like archery or not, I don't think it's the federal government's job to withhold funding from a school because they include something in their curriculum that the federal government deems inappropriate.
So the federal government didn't deem it inappropriate. The Congress did. I don't know if he doesn't know how the three branches of government work. I don't know if he's completely and totally ignorant on every function of the government. A lot of conservatives seem to not understand how any of the branches of government work. The federal government, the executive branch, cannot make decisions on its own about laws. They can only make decisions about rules which come from laws. And this rule did come from a law that was passed by the legislature, by Congress. But maybe he doesn't know that because he's a fucking moron. It's possible.
Locality found that to be a relevant locus of education. So what you see then is an abandonment of the original purpose that's long past. You don't have this problem that the Department of Education was originally formed to solve of siphoning money from black school districts to white school districts and laundering that effectively in public funds. That doesn't exist anymore. So they find new purposes instead, creating a lot more damage along the way. So you asked me to steel man it, and can I say something constructive rather than just, pounding down on the other side? One way to think about this is, for a lot of these agencies, were many of them formed with a positive intention at the outset? Yes. Where that positive intention existed, I'm still a skeptic of creating bureaucracies, but if you're going to create one, at least make it, what should we call it? A task force. Make it a task force. A task force versus an agency means after it's done, you celebrate, you've done your work, pat yourself on the back, and then move on, rather than creating a standing bureaucracy, which actually finds things to do after it has already solved or addressed the first reason it was born in the first place. And I think we don't have enough of that in our culture. Right? I mean, even if you have a company that's generated tons of cash flow and it solved a problem, let's say it's a biopharmaceutical company that developed a cure to some disease, and the only thing people knew at that company was how to develop a cure to that disease, and they generated a boatload of cash from doing it. At a certain point, you could just give it to your shareholders and close up shop. And that's actually a beautiful thing to do. You don't see that happen enough in the American consciousness and the American culture of
when you create what I'm sorry, and I could just learn it. What large pharmaceutical company was founded with the purpose of inventing a single drug and then closing shop? But
an institution has achieved its purpose.
Almost done.
Celebrate it and then move on. And I think that culture in our government would result in a vastly restrained scope of government rather than today. It's a one-way ratchet. Once you cause it to come into existence, you cause new things to come into existence, but the old one that came into existence continues to persist and exist as well. And that's where you get this metastasis over the last century.
Okay, that's what a ridiculously stupid. Okay, so that's him. All right. So what? Maybe later on he suggests it. You know that like all federal loans, like student loans and federal aid and all that for college, all of that comes from the federal government. Did he suggest like a replacement to any of that, or?
You talking about the
Vivek, like what was it? Yeah, what is he replacing it with? If he wants to get rid of it,
or the management, all those student loans and stuff.
Yep.
I know. He said. You can remove a lot of the funding for the for the Department of Education, return that back to parents or school districts, and then anything else that is important, like because the Department of Education is involved in like vocational training and stuff, put that under the Department of Labor, which seemed reasonable to me.
Okay. Is there a single other country or example that he can point to where somebody does that?
I don't know.
Don't you think that maybe that would be important?
Well, I don't know. Prior to you even pulling up that clip, I asked you, are you even open-minded that you could be wrong on this?
Yeah, of course I am. He could have
and
given
you said no.
Wait, no on what?
Oh, wait, maybe you said, was it maybe the Maha thing? I thought I asked, maybe I didn't, I don't know.
I think you asked me like, oh, no, you asked me if I could be wrong about the Maha thing. And I said no, because I just look at like the exit polling stuff. I mean, like there is a world where you could show me that like, let's say that we look at like, of all the people who voted on the economy, 92% of people who said that they think the economy is most important thought it was important because of chronic disease or something like that. Or, there are worlds you convince me, but like, it wouldn't just be like, these are my vibes and that's why I think it's better than,
I guess I don't really know what to. The exercise that you just performed was you pulled up what he said, and then you paused it every 30 seconds and your goal was, I'm going to find something he's wrong on. Right, that was the exercise that you just performed. It was not.
Hold on. To be clear, the exercise I performed was to see what he was talking about. right? I didn't know anything about that archery thing. It might have been that when I looked it up, Biden might have said, fuck these kids. We're not going to do archery anywhere because I hate archery. Okay.
Even I wouldn't have said that Biden would have done that.
Sure. But I mean, I didn't even know what he was referring to. It could have been the case that I started looking all this stuff up and it's like, oh shit, that is pretty dumb. I don't know why the Department of Education would do this. I think that's stupid, right? That is possible.
Well, like you said, the Department of Education was interpreting a law and doing the, what do you call it? The execution of it. That's the executive branch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And his point was there's evidence that schools were denied funding because they had archery in their curriculum.
Correct.
He
Which
didn't
seems
say
to be
why.
true. Yeah, but he's making it sound like it was because of the Department of Education having these horrible equity, whatever bullshit rules. But it was really the will of the legislature. Congress passed a law for this. That's significantly different.
But what was the law? The law was
that you can't train with deadly weapons.
Right, but and this is a vibes-based thing, I guess. It's like letter of the law versus spirit of the law. It's like, I think it's reasonable to interpret that, when I went to high school and I shot archery bows in gym, that does not fall under, that is clearly not what the law was intending.
You don't think archery, you don't think a bow and arrow can be it's literally letter of the law, a deadly weapon. You can say that spirit of the law.
A knife in a kitchen could. Knife in a kitchen.
You can say that spirit of the law might be different, but how did they rectify it? Congress passed a different law to change it, right?
Right, because it was denying funding when it shouldn't have.
Well, or when they didn't want it to, right? Yeah. So they changed it. Yeah. But that's fine, right?
But that's
like,
there's nuance here. Hold on.
No, wait.
Nuance here.
Hold on.
Hundreds of schools.
No.
Okay.
The alternative is, do you think the people at the evil Department of Education were like, we're going to fuck these archery schools over? Do you think that was the thought? They were like, we're just going to fuck these people.
Probably not.
Okay.
They need it. They're a bureaucracy. They need to justify their own existence.
No. They don't need to justify it. Congress already did. It was a law given to them by Congress that the Department of Education was then tasked with enforcing. And part of the law said no training on deadly weapons, which is why Congress passed a different law. Like, oh, hold on, let's change this, right?
Yeah, because the Department of Education screwed up in its subjective interpretation of the law, which is fair enough. It's
arguably, I would say structurally, I'm more correct than you are there, because if they felt like that Congress had fucked up in their that the executive had messed up in their interpretation of the law, then somebody could have challenged it in court. They could have taken it to court and said, hold on, why is the Department of Education banning this? We disagree with this statutory interpretation. And ever since Chevron was overturned, the Supreme Court would have the final say in what that statute interpretation would actually look like. But instead, the Congress said, oh shit, let's just pass a law amending this. We actually probably should be able to train with some deadly weapons. Maybe we fucked up in our wording of the law, right? Sure. Now, you know what? The funny thing is, and now this gets really deep into law, but the funny thing is in a pre-conservative Supreme Court world, it might actually be that the federal government would have said, you know what? We can probably have kids doing archery, because with the Chevron doctrine, all the federal government would have to have said is that this is a permissible reading of the statute. This rule could probably work. But post Chevron being overturned, when Kavanaugh was writing his opinion on why they overturned it, part of the big thing that the Supreme Court said was actually there's only one correct interpretation of every single statute passed by Congress. You can't say this is permissible anymore. There's one right interpretation. So it could have been that the conservative court is what drove the Department of Education to go, okay, well, hold on. There's literally, the Supreme Court's going to say there's one way to interpret this, so fuck it. It says no deadly weapons, then fuck it, no deadly weapons, right? Sorry, but that's a whole legal...
Sure. I guess my takeaway from this is, at minimum, am I supposed to come away thinking Vivek's a liar or incompetent from that?
Because he didn't mention that this was a law passed by Congress. He didn't mention that it was remedied by the Congress, and he's making it sound like the Department of Education is doing some horrible, evil thing vindictively. That's the feeling. They want to push equity, and they want to take away archery. That's what he's saying.
Inefficiency is not the opposite, but inefficiency is completely different from vindictiveness. And the whole point, and I think he says this pretty often, this is just generally true, it's like you can do bad things due to incompetence, not vindictiveness. I don't think the point that he was making in that story was the Department of Education is a bunch of evil, rural people who hate archery. It was like, here's an example of inefficiency caused by as a result of regulation. Are you good there?
No, I dropped something. Now it's going to drive me crazy. Keep going, I'm listening. I wouldn't agree that was because he could just say that. You could, and also because as a business person, which ostensibly, right, isn't he supposed to be or would have been a business person? If you're going to talk about, I think that a huge red flag. There are so many red flags he threw up in that conversation. But another red flag is, well, when you talk about an inefficiency, what do you mean by that? what's being inefficient here? What's our input? What's our output? And what's being modulated in a bad way, right? Is he saying inefficient in that like the dollars aren't being spent well for the educational outcomes that they're attaining? He kind of pointed out the difference between like black schools and white schools or whatever. But if that's the case, how would dissolving the Department of Education even help those inefficiencies? If the money just goes back to the people and the people keep spending it, like, are we assuming they'd spend it a different way? Like, he didn't give a good... And he's saying that literally the Department of Education only exists to continue to propagate itself, which makes it sound like they're acting, if not maliciously, then like grossly incompetently. Like, just nothing, it's just not a good...
Would you advise that anyone listening to this do not even waste your time listening to Vivek talk with anyone about anything?
Yeah,
anymore?
Vivek is a way. Well, I mean, you can listen to him if you want to understand like politically what he's saying, but don't learn anything from Vivek. You have to fact check everything after that. Yeah, he's a liar, of course. He's lying politically. Yeah.
Do you think he's malicious when he's lying? Do you think he knows what he's doing?
Yeah. I hear him talk, and he sounds like a decently smart guy. So if he's lying, my guess is it's malicious. Yeah, because he should know better.
Interesting.
Fuck.
Okay. Yeah, you take your time.
Nope, keep going. I'm listening.
I don't know. This goes back to one of my fundamental orientations, which is was what I was talking about with. What did you drop?
Don't worry about it. Fundamental orientations when
Yeah,
I was talking to who? JJ McCullough? Rowan?
No, sorry. I'm distracted.
Oh, don't worry
You're
about me.
distracted. I want you to not be distracted.
I'm here. 100%. And no, I didn't find it, but I will find it. Go ahead.
Perhaps my undiagnosed autism is, for some reason, thinking that you might not be paying full attention.
Okay, I am.
As he gets up off the ground.
I got it. I found it. Thank God.
There we go.
Go ahead.
My general orientation, I'm much more vibes based.
Okay.
I'm being facetious. I guess I put a lot more stock in intuition than maybe you do, or maybe not. But I guess, like, I don't know how to, other than genuine, I'm just trying to understand what your perspective is. I don't know how to reconcile when we just have like a fundamental different intuition. Because you said like Vivek is maliciously lying in that. I'm fair enough. I mean, there's psychopaths. Like, people can fucking be completely different than what they really are. But like, I generally feel like I have a good intuition of whether or not people are lying, unless they're genuine psychopaths, and I've been wrong before. But like, to say that you said, oh, he's obviously just like maliciously lying. It's like, really? Because that's not at all the intuition I get.
Well, my issue is, how could he have
reconcile
known
that.
so much about this particular thing without knowing the actual facts around it? How did he not know that? How did he not know that this wasn't actually a fault of the Department of Education? This was a fault of congressional legislation. How does he not mention that a single time?
Maybe he's a psychopath. I don't know.
No, he doesn't have to be a psychopath. He's just lying to do a political point. Like, keep in mind that when you're like, think about you want to talk about intuition, human behavior. If I'm asked to give an example for something, my mind is immediately jumping to the strongest example, right? Oh, you think this guy's a horrible person? Why? Because I know that he used to like treat workers poorly where he was the CEO of. Oh, okay. Any other reasons? Yeah, he also did a triple homicide on his whole family once. Like, you probably would have brought that up first, right? Like, people's minds usually jump to their strongest examples. The fact that his strongest example of why we need to abolish the massive Department of Education, which is responsible for servicing so many of our... Paste. Hmm. Wow. Call dropped. My Discord is fucked. Let me restart.
Hello?
Hi, what's up?
I've never seen that. It said no route.
Oh, weird.
I've never seen that in my life. Sorry about that.
No problem. You're good.
I forgot. I remember what you're saying, and then it took too long to reconnect.
I think you were saying, I agree, Vivek is a scammer. No, I'm just kidding. I think that if he's suggesting something as radical as abolishing the entire Department of Education, that's a really big claim. I would expect him to have like some big ideas or big plans behind it. And
well, I think he does, but you just haven't listened to him yet. He had a whole hour, like for example, he had a whole hour and a half back and forth with Ezra Klein on the New York Times.
Okay.
And I listened, I was like, I disagree with Ezra Klein, but clearly there is a reasonable ideological disagreement at play here. And to simply say Vivek is a complete moron and imbecile and should not be listened to, it's like that is not satisfying to me. But
okay.
You know,
I don't understand. How is it if you have limited time in the day, you'll listen to people that just tell blatant lies? Is it, do you just have nobody better to listen to, or you don't desire to do any of the research on your own, or because you only have so much time of the day, why would you even waste your time? Do you agree that I just demonstrated that he was, at the very least, if he didn't lie, he was just factually horrendous at his recounting of the example that he gave, right?
I would disagree with that.
What part would you disagree with?
I believe the exact statement he said is that there's evidence that schools in the Midwest were denied funding because the Department of Education was tying it to curriculum stuff.
Sure. So, well,
and your point is yes, but Congress passed a law that enabled the Department of Education to do that.
Let's listen again. Hold on. Wait. Oh no. Wait. Can you hear that?
I can hear you. I can't hear anything playing.
Oh no! I unplugged my thing. Hold on.
Did you drop it again?
I was under my desk too much. Wait. Wait.
Through the ideology.
Okay. All right. Let's listen. Hold on.
Ideologies that they demand in the content of the curricula that these public schools actually teach. So quality has bureaucratic over or contrary. One of the things we've learned in siphoning money in one direction versus another. To the contrary, one of the things
we're going to listen and we're going to break this down. Okay.
We've learned is that the school districts in the inner city, many of which are predominantly black, actually spend more money per, as measured by test
We're just
scores
gonna
and
look
other
for that
performance
example
on a
here.
per student, determining student success, and actually suggesting that even the overfunding of some of those already poorly run schools, backdrop, the Department of Education has instead extrapolated that original purpose of what was a racial equality purpose to instead implement a different vision of racial equity through the ideologies that they demand in the content of the curriculum that these public schools actually teach. So Department of Education funding, so federal funding account.
Okay, so the broad point that he's making here is that the Department of Education is demanding ideologically that things are implemented as part of the curriculum, right?
I don't know what he's talking about related to gender, DEI related stuff, but sure.
Okay, but that's so broadly. Okay, so his claim is the Department of Education is doing a bad thing. We're assuming it's bad even, but he's doing a thing where he's saying that the Department of Education is forcing ideology onto these schools. Okay, right?
Sure, that's a different claim from the Archery one.
Well, we'll see. But he says that, and then this is the example that he's going to go on to give, okay?
Department of Education funding, so federal funding accounts for about, I'm giving you round numbers here, but around 10% of the funding of most public schools across the country. But that comes with strings attached. So in today's Department of Education, this didn't happen back in 1970, but it's happening today. Ironically, it's funny how these things change with the bureaucracies that fail. They blow smoke to cover up for their own failures.
So his claim here is that back in the day, what I'm about to tell you didn't happen, but now to cover up from their own failures, they're going to create new problems. Do you agree that's a fair interpretation, or do you want to re-listen and give me a different one?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
What happens with today's Department of Education?
So what does today's Department of Education do that's so different than what they used to do when they were nobler? Now, what do they do?
They effectively say you don't get that funding unless you adopt certain goals deemed at achieving racial or gender equity goals.
So firstly, just as a funny thing, so even he's actually already contradicted himself where he's saying you don't get funding unless you adopt certain gender or whatever equity goals, even though he said, I don't know if this is true, but he said the whole reason why the Department of Education was founded was to actually prevent money from being stolen from schools that have certain racial composition. So exactly what he's saying right now could have even been applied to the founding of the Department of Education. So he's already contradicted himself internally, but okay.
Well, the gender, race, like the DEI. What did he say explicitly? Gender, race, and what? Or
Well,
whatever
he's
gender,
saying,
racial goals?
we can listen, hold on.
Department of Education.
He said,
They effectively say you don't get that funding unless you adopt certain goals deemed at achieving racial or gender equity goals.
so he's saying it's not like this is a new thing.
Yeah, racial gender equity is that's the modern instantiation of.
Sure, maybe, but I mean, according to him,
stopping white money from going to vice versa.
maybe it depends on the examples that he gives. But I mean, I'm sure the people back when it
That's
was
how I interpret it.
that's fine. But I'm sure that the people back in the day, if they didn't want their money going to black schools, they probably would have seen that as an extreme like diversity, equity, bullshit thing, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
okay,
True. Yep.
And in fact, they also intervene in the curriculum where there's evidence of schools in the Midwest or in the Great Plains that have been denied funding because Department of Education funding, so long as they have certain subjects like archery.
So what he's saying right now is there's evidence that schools have been denied funding. So first of all, this is actually a lie, right? There was no evidence that any funding was denied. There was concern that a statutory interpretation could lead to these programs being defunded in the future and that schools were looking to cut them from their curriculum. So nothing had actually even been defunded yet. So do you agree that the first thing he says is actually just a lie?
I would say that's a complete difference without a distinction. Whether or not schools were denied money that was supposed to go to schools did not go to schools because of the Department of Education's.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened yet.
That statute.
That hasn't happened yet, though, right? Because this hasn't even been implemented yet.
What hasn't been implemented?
Like if I go back and I look at that Fox News article, hold on. Wait.
Meet the traveling trio, each helping to protect their money with Chase.
Do you not have YouTube Premium?
Well, I'm on the Fox News website.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you were watching.
So it sounds like the Biden administration is blocking key federal funding earmarked under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 for schools with hunting and archery programs, right? So it sounds like this is funding that's earmarked for education next year. That this isn't like they haven't already started.
I thought, what was the law that you said that was supposed to stop people being trained with dangerous weapons?
It was this additional Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Right. So schools did not get funding if that funding could have
I think
gone
that
to
was what the
Department of Education-
interpretation. That was what the interpretation would have been. But I don't believe any funding had been withheld yet. That's why, so it says here, some of these schools have already canceled plans to include archery or hunting education courses in their curriculum due to the education department guidance. So this hadn't happened yet, right? But this was for guidance that was, I think, for next year or whatever.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. In my mind, that's a difference without a distinction. It's like schools that were going to have archery part of their curriculum had to take it out because of the federal government, their statutes, because if they kept it in, they would have been denied.
But yes, that was the guidance given by the education department. Yeah, but they'd passed an amendment that had gotten rid of that, so that didn't come to pass, right?
How long after? How long after that amendment was passed? Was there any schools that were denied funding or that did not get funding because they had archery in there, or did they need to take out archery from their curriculum for? This is my point. We're getting so into the detail here. And
When you hold on, wait,
this is relevant.
I just want you, I just want you to know that when you say that is the most triggering thing to me, because what it tells me is that you don't, that you want to have your vibes are not just based on your feelings or things, but you actually have no attachment to reality whatsoever. This is not into the weeds. What I'm talking about, this is the only thing that matters. Nothing that you're saying matters, or your feelings. The only thing that matters is what is actually factually happening. And the fact that you don't even care, that should speak volume. That should be something.
No, it's not that I don't care.
Okay.
It's that I do care about the fact, and I'm actually interested that we're doing this. What you just asked me about, they weren't denied funding. They voluntarily withheld funding because they would have been denied funding if they kept that in their curriculum.
Correct.
That to me is at that level of detail. Now we're talking that's an irrelevant distinction. It is relevant whether or not a school was withheld funding or not from having archery in their curriculum, which is the point that Vivek was talking about. And then you get into. But if you look at how the law is applied, it wasn't that they were denied it technically. It was that they voluntarily withdrew it because it would have been denied.
It's that for the next school, yeah. But the difference is that no funding was withheld, so schools weren't being defunded. And two, Congress passed an amendment to make it so this wasn't even an issue. So none of this was ever.
That second part is
pretty important. But so we can go back and listen again.
Reading the curriculum where there's evidence of schools in the Midwest or in the Great Plains that have been denied funding because Department of Education funding, so long as they have certain subjects like archery. There was one instance of a school that had archery in its curriculum. I find that to be pretty interesting. Actually.
So there wasn't one instance. There were hundreds, I think, of schools that were thinking of cutting this. So he's not even doing a good job at steelmanning his side. But
I think you have different kinds of physical education. This is one that combines mental focus with physical.
Notice how he doesn't even give the reason why. You notice that too. Also, keep in mind. I'm sorry, Jesus. See, I'm getting sucked into the conservative mind games. I'm trying to argue with you.
I'm not trying to play mind games.
No, I know that you're not. But my take is that you're already captured by, right? And I'm captured by it to some extent because right now I'm trying to show you why I don't think he's not even giving an honest representation of his side, but. Really what I should be expecting, if he was an honest actor, if he wasn't a subhuman, degenerate politician fuck piece of shit, what he would actually be doing is he would be saying the Department of Education blocked this thing because there was a rule passed that weapons should be banned in schools. He doesn't even give the reason why. Remember, the only precursor that we've got to this section is that they're doing it because they're ideologically captured and they just want DEI and all this stuff, and they're attacking, I guess, physical education because they want to control the curriculum. That's the only lead up we've gotten to this. He's not even saying why they banned this thing, right? You have no idea. It just sounds like the DA is being an evil, sprawling bureaucracy that's doing evil, horrible bureaucratic things.
Do you agree that their interpretation of that law was a bad interpretation? Because otherwise, why would unless you think Congress making that second law was a bad thing?
Well, no. Just to be clear,
fucked up.
Congress making the second law. Congress making the second law supports the idea that the interpretation was correct, and that's why they needed to pass a second law to rectify it, rather than going to the Supreme Court and challenging it. Now, somebody could say, well, hold on, Destiny. Well, it might be they didn't want to wait for the Supreme Court, so they wanted to pass it. That could be it too. But I mean, like, if we want to talk about whether the interpretation was right or wrong, I mean, we can try and find the text of the act that they're referring to. Hold on. Wait a second. Okay. Section 13401, amendment in ESEA funding. Section 8526 of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 is amended. 1 in paragraph 5 by striking or after the semicolon, in paragraph 6 by striking the period at the end of that. Okay, and 7. And then they have here a subsection 7, I guess, where they're adding something. For the provision to any person, I'm guessing provisions to fund education, for the provision to any person of a dangerous weapon as defined in Section 930, subsection G2 of Title 18, the United States Code, or training in the use of a dangerous weapon. So that seems like to be what they added. So is a bow and arrow, is that a dangerous weapon?
Is a knife in a kitchen?
It could be, yeah.
I would... in fact, hold on. Isn't interpretation of law, isn't that vibes based fundamentally?
It used to be, but it is no longer after the Supreme Court. So we used to have something called the Chevron doctrine, which means that as long as the executive can say this is a permissible reading of the law, then even if the Supreme Court would have interpreted it differently, the executive is allowed to stand. But after Chevron, the Supreme Court has said, well, actually, there is only one correct interpretation of the law, and that is what the Supreme Court will provide for, right?
Yeah, but it's still the Supreme Court's vibes that are determining it.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying that like the Supreme Court says that there is objectively one single definition.
Yeah, but if that was objectively the case, then how could it have been? It was a different. Wasn't it a different court that would have said there was objectively not? And then now that
there's only one court at the very top. That's the Supreme Court. Yeah,
but I'm saying if it was different judges, they would have came to a different conclusion potentially.
They could have, but it's one Supreme Court. It's a Supreme Court decision, right?
This is my broader point. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to trigger you with I knew as soon as I said that, I was like, this is gonna, because you're getting into the. And to be fair, look, I did. This is the level of detail that needs to be gotten in for important things, like not to bring this up again, but like.
Oh, hold on, wait, just as a real quick thing. So, on this amendment to the ESEA funding, right? So I'm seeing that they're talking about a person of a dangerous weapon as defined in Section 930 G2 of Title 18 U.S. Code. So that's referring to the U.S. Criminal Code. So when I looked up for the U.S. Criminal Code, we've got Title 18. U.S. Code 930, Section 930, we go down to, they said, subsection G2. So, as used in this section 2, the term dangerous weapon means a weapon, device, instrument, material, or substance, animate or inanimate, that is used for or is readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury, except that such term does not include a pocket knife with a blade of less than 2.5 inches in length. So, it seems like archery...
A culinary knife. Or a buzzsaw, like in wood's shop.
I don't know if a buzzsaw is used for killing things, like causing death or serious bodily injury, right?
You seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre? No.
But I'm saying like I don't know if a knife would either, right? Now hunting knives maybe, but just a culinary knife, I don't think that's what it's used for. It's used for cooking. But bow and arrow, bows are used for hunting, right? That's all they're used for.
Or target practice. That's what we used them in gym for.
Target for what? To practice hunting, right?
No, to like hit a target, like in sports, like when you shoot a basketball, you hit a target. The basketball hoop is a target that you aim for.
Can you use basketballs to hunt?
Target. Depending on the person, I'm sure you could kill someone with a fucking basketball. You beat them hard enough. What about a baseball bat?
Are guns used for target practice in the same way that basketballs are used for?
What about a baseball bat? How many people have been killed by baseball bats? If I could find evidence that dozens of people have been killed and beaten to death with baseball bats, does that then justify cutting out baseball?
If somebody sees you with a closet full of baseball bats in your house, do they say, wow, do you go murdering or hunting people? No. If somebody sees that you have a compound crossbow or something.
You're telling me if someone walks into a high school and they see a bunch of bows in the gym, they're like, man, they're training some domestic terrorists in here. This is my point. You understand? Right now what we're doing is a vibes-based thing. You agree,
hold
right?
on, wait. Even if they walked in and saw a bunch of guns, I don't think I would assume that they're doing a bunch of terrorist training. But I'm saying, like, if you saw a bow,
they're high school.
Yeah, but if you saw a bow in somebody's house, you'd probably assume, like, oh, does this guy hunt? You might ask, oh, you a hunter? Oh, no? Oh, you just do, like, archery for sport or whatever,
yes,
right?
But we're talking about the Department of Education's interpretation of this law as it relates to schools.
Yeah, but it seems like that interpretation was textually correct. This provision banned a person having a dangerous weapon or training for a dangerous weapon, and as defined in the U.S. Code, it includes any weapon, device, instrument, material, or substance. Yeah, so it seems like it was a fair interpretation.
Wrong. I want to apologize for saying we got too into the details, because this is the level of detail we needed to get into. Because now I understand fundamentally this is entirely. I'm not asking you to say I'm right, because I'm not. But do you understand my contention at this level now?
What is your contention right now?
That the Department of Education made a shitty ruling.
They didn't, though. It seems like they interpreted it.
I think they did, based on this conversation that we're having about. If I saw a bow in a high school, I could very clearly say it's not being used to train to people to kill. Same with a baseball bat.
But it's training with a deadly weapon. It literally is.
So is a baseball bat.
Baseball bat is used for baseball. It's called a baseball bat.
What if I demonstrated to you that people have been killed with baseball bats, which I haven't looked it up, but I guarantee if I spend an hour,
if you want to take this for approach, that's fine, but you're way outside the bounds of the law or any reasonable statutory interpretation of anything ever. Like, you understand that this is the type of stuff that's like a good Reddit argument, but if you were in front of a judge and, they found
I agree with you.
No, but your Reddit arguments don't work in the real world. Nobody thinks this way in an actual court of law or when it comes to actually arguing policy. Nobody goes like, well, couldn't actually a cell phone be a deadly weapon if you didn't Israel blow up pager? Like, nobody thinks this way. Baseball bats and mitts to catch things are not used to shove drugs. Like, nobody thinks of it that way. But archery bows are clearly used as an instrument of hunting. It's plainly obvious to anybody that looks at it. It's plainly obvious. And if you disagree there, you're wrong. You're out of touch. You've never been to any hunting area before. Nobody would assume to the same level. Or would you agree that if somebody saw a baseball bat in your home and a bow and arrow in your home, that they would make the exact same assumption about what those two things are used for?
In a school. I told you, I literally shot bows in high school. In the Chicago suburbs. I've never been hunting in my life. So that if bows are in a gymnasium in a high school, clearly they're used for shooting targets, which is in and of itself just an act. Like kicking a field goal
I agree,
through two posts is
kicking a field goal through two posts is not training you how to kill people. Even playing baseball is not training you how to kill people.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Okay, to be clear, also, when they passed that amended law, the last paragraph, they passed in an amendment to it, and they said, current law prohibits the use of these funds to provide any person with a dangerous weapon or training in the use of a dangerous weapon. The Act specifies that this prohibition shall not apply to the use of these funds for permissible program activities that provide students with educational instruction or educational enrichment activities, such as archery, hunting, other shooting sports, or culinary arts. So it sounds like even knives had been banned as part of that law.
Right. And so this is my argument. In hindsight, would be given that Congress passed that second exception, because correct me if you disagree with this chain of events, that's original statute was passed, the Department of Education overreached.
Overreached?
According to the fact that a law was passed to specifically dial that back and say you can have funding in your schools if you have.
Just to be clear, if we just go structurally by the way the government operates, then no, it seems like they interpreted it precisely correctly, which is why Congress gave them a new statute to amend the last one.
They interpreted it precisely correctly. How are you determining? Isn't whether or not they interpret it correctly a function of the outcome it produced in the world?
No, it's a function of whether or not it agreed with the written language of the law passed by Congress. And it seems to be the case, if we were to make any assumption, we would assume that the law was interpreted correctly. That's why Congress gave them a new law.
That's okay. And to me, it's the exact opposite. It was clearly they were like, oh fuck, we didn't mean for this law to ban archery in schools.
Correct.
Let's add a new law so that they don't do that anymore.
Yes, but what you just said, we didn't mean for this to do it. They might have fucked up on how they'd written the law. Yeah. So now they pass a new one to rectify it. But imagine the world that you're suggesting, right?
Yep.
Because it's funny, because conservatives will do this. I'm not saying you're conservative, but you might be saying like, well, clearly the Congress didn't intend that. And these were arguments that were used, by the way, in the Chevron case, where you're saying, well, hold on. The Department of Education should just know what they mean, right? They should just know what they mean when they talk about deadly weapons. Obviously, they don't mean hunting or archery, right? But is that obvious? At the very least, do you think that this is plainly obvious what it means? That it plainly, obviously wouldn't include archery?
The law that said it's not supposed to be training people with deadly weapons?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's plain. You're talking in a high school gym.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say it's plainly obvious. Same with culinary arts. Like if schools that teach cooking with big chef's knives that are longer than 2 inches, the fact that anyone even thought, "Ooh, I think this falls under this statute," I'd say that's a bureaucracy needing to justify its own existence, which happens all the time in non-government entities. You agree with that?
So in the
right?
in the U.S. code, do you think that you can get charged with assault with a deadly weapon or murdering somebody with or first degree attempted or second whatever bullshit with an attempted weapon with a weapon if you use a bow and arrow? Do you think that anybody's ever been charged?
Probably.
With that? Okay, then if this law banned you from training students to use dangerous weapons, and we agree that a bow and arrow is the use of a dangerous weapon, and you're learning how to use it as a dangerous weapon, which is what target shooting is, how is this not just reading the letter of the law?
For the same reason we just talked about with the baseball bat.
But they don't train with a baseball bat to hit people. They train to hit a ball. In archery, you train to shoot an arrow at a target. What?
This is the vibes thing.
Okay.
You can use a baseball bat to beat someone to fucking death.
If you had a school that was training you with a baseball bat to kill people, we agree that would probably be banned under this, right? Let's say Let's say that you walked into a school and it was like, okay, today we're doing our baseball bat training. It was a bunch of people. It was like targets, and you run around like, how many people can you hit at the same time, right? Yes, that would be bad. Yeah.
I just do not accept that target practice is training how to kill people.
Here's a question. Sorry.
Like skeet shooting is not training how to kill people. Like
skeet shooting is literally training how to go hunting and shooting moving targets, right?
Okay, sure, but hold on. That's not training to kill people with a bow and arrow. Be like, if you, like, here's a human target, here's their jugular, this is the areas you should hit. I'm telling you, I'm just putting myself in my gym class. We had bows, we shot blue, red, and yellow.
If I wanted to train with a bow to be able to kill people, I would probably do target practice, right? Isn't that what you do?
And if I want, yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's training to kill people.
But that's not the purpose of it, obviously.
Okay, that might be the case, but that's not what the law from Congress said. It just said that they were.
Okay.
It just said that you were going to ban people in the training and the use of a dangerous weapon. That's what they said. It might have been reactionary, it might have been a bad law from the Congress, but then they passed another law to change it.
Right, because clearly the way the law was written, it was not intending to ban bow and arrows in high schools.
Possibly, yeah, that might have been the case, but the intention is not enough. We're talking about statutory construction. What does the law say? Okay. What you intended doesn't necessarily matter. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Do you at least accept the possibility that my interpretation of this is not entirely fucking stupid?
What is your interpretation of it?
That a bow and arrow in high school is not at all falls under the category of training someone with a deadly weapon.
It, by definition, it is. It literally is.
But this goes back to our last conversation.
Like hunting, like bows were used to hunt. Like that's what it is. Yeah. What do you mean? You don't think people shot at people with bow and arrows? Haven't you seen
That's not hunting. That's warfare. I've played Total War. Don't pretend I don't know that archery was used in warfare.
Okay, so yes, literally, bows and arrows were big parts of combat. Yes.
Combat is not hunting. Okay, this is my point. And I am kind of enjoying this. This is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but hold on. This goes back to what we talked about last time, where you were like, it was the example you came up with. Was like, you can say something that's technically true, but is clearly implying a falsehood. Like you talked about what was the example you gave? Or you had sex with a high schooler or 14, but you leave out the part that you were 14 when it happened. It's like, I'm saying something that's true on the paper to imply a lie, right?
Yeah.
You remember what we were talking about? That feels like what this is.
Okay, okay.
Right? It's like, clearly that law was to stop money from going to like training people to like use
Yes, I understand. Okay, hold on. Let me just pull this back, okay?
Let's do it.
Okay.
We've had a lot of fun so far.
Okay.
I've had.
On a very broad vibes-based level, okay?
Mm-hmm. Now you're speaking my language.
I don't even think we disagree, okay? Oh, fuck. I'm fucking around with something. I keep dropping it. I'm not even going to go looking for it, okay?
That's fine.
On a very vibes-based level, I don't think we disagree. If dad were to say, okay, dad tells his brother, my uncle, dad says, hey, listen, If you want to go hang out with Steven and do things or whatever, you do whatever, but like don't do any of that weird psychopathic murder shit. Honestly, if he said that and then my uncle was like, okay, we're gonna go practice with bows and arrows, I'd probably but like on a very broad vibes level, I'd be like, okay, sure, maybe. Okay. But the issue is we're not talking vibes. We're not doing a broad thing. We're talking about very explicitly and specifically the structure of the government of the United States, okay? In the government of the United States, there is a huge, broad, deliberative body called the Congress. It's supposed to be slow, agonizing. They're supposed to deliberate. They represent the will of all the people, and they have to hammer out what should these laws look like. Once the Congress has passed a law and they've sent it over to the executive, we have one president. And the executive is supposed to say, thanks for the law, I'm reading it, and I'm enforcing it. Done. It's not supposed to be the job of the executive to go, I see what you guys passed here, but I don't really think I think you probably meant to do this thing, right? Probably. Now, the government, the executive kind of worked that way a little bit more before with the Chevron doctrine, but still not even. Like, you're supposed to read the text of the law and then enforce it as is, because the government, the executive branch is not making laws. They're only there to enforce the laws passed by the republic part of our government, the Congress. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, and if we agree that government is structured in such a way, if the Department of Education is doing something that we really don't like, and we think it's bad, we have to look, okay, well, what are they doing? Oh my God, they're going to say they might pull funding from archery courses? Well, why is that? And then you look at the law they passed and they said, well, we can't train anybody. We can't provide funding for people that are being trained with dangerous weapons. And then you look and you go like, oh, fuck me, okay. Well, do we really think that... Well, let's see. When Congress passed the law, they literally referenced the criminal code. Well, fuck it. That's probably the most fair reading of that law. Now, is there another world where maybe they could have seen it differently? They think the Congress... Maybe. But you know what the Supreme Court would say? The Supreme Court would say, I'm sorry, but unless these motherfuckers in Congress forgot how to write, they should write it into the law. Because let's go with your example. There are two huge issues. Here's the first issue. The first issue is, maybe the federal government sees this and you think it's so obvious that a bow and arrow should be allowed. Maybe they see it and they go, not only is it obvious that a bow and arrow is not allowed, we don't think that students should even be able to have backpacks. You could swing a backpack and kill somebody, right? Well, would you want the federal government, would you want the executive branch to be able to do that?
Stop kids from having backpacks?
Yeah.
No, that would be bad.
Correct, right? So we look to the Congress for guidance from the law in what they should ban. And they referenced the criminal code, right? So that's one thing. We don't want the executive branch making these like determinations. That's up to the Congress. We just want them to enforce the law, not create the law. But a second huge issue that could come up is, let's say that the executive branch, okay, it's staffed by a bunch of, okay, you guys, okay, and they go, okay, obviously we know that Congress wanted to do this. And we've even talked about Congress, they said they want to do this, obviously, okay? Well, what could happen is next year, okay, a whole bunch of schools are doing archery, and maybe there's an accident in class, or maybe whatever. Maybe just some super woke liberal parent sees their student coming home with an archery flyer, and they're like, excuse me? My students are learning fucking archery? This is bullshit. And then they call their congressman. They're like, hey, why are they training archery classes? I thought we passed a law that banned training with deadly weapons. And then Congress says, oh shit, you're right. We're going to start up a court case. Let's say it gets all the way to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court looks at it. And it's very possible, I would argue, likely, that the Supreme Court would look at that. They would look at the executive rule. Then they would look at the law that Congress passed and they'd go, I'm sorry, why does the executive think that they're allowed to just say bow and arrows aren't weapons of war or hunting weapons or deadly weapons? And now they strike it down in the Supreme Court, and now everybody's fucked. Because now the federal government has to pull funding from all the schools, and now all the schools are like, oh shit, we're like ultra fucked. Now you've got to fight for a temporary injunction. Now everything is really fucked at that point. So it's probably better that Congress has passed a law amending the language to make it crystal clear what should or shouldn't be allowed. This is the function of government, I think. Nothing in here is bad about the bureaucracy or people not using common sense. It's you have to pass a letter of the law, and then you give it to the executive, and the executive enforces it, like a compiler given some programming.
I believe the problem is that when you have thousands upon thousands of these regulations, the time delay in between rectifying these errors is significant enough that it creates enough regulatory tape that prevents good things from happening. Which is absolutely the case.
Then we should demand the Congress should pass better laws. The Congress should pass something that's more clear. Regardless of what you're saying, that there could be issues, the solution can't be the executive just makes all these decisions, right?
The solution can't be the executive makes all these decisions.
Yeah.
The solution would be put more executive power at the local and state level to adjudicate these, where it's more efficient that they can rectify these laws themselves. This is like the,
You could do that if you wanted to, right?
A libertarian.
You could do that, but the Congress didn't write that law, and the executive doesn't have the right to
Yeah,
do
because
that.
they're all run by fucking globalist Marxists.
Okay.
I get what you're saying.
Sure. Let me just play the last 30 seconds of this, and then sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you have different kinds of physical education. This is one that combines mental focus with physical aptitude. But hey, maybe I'm biased. Doesn't matter whether you like archery or not. I don't think it's the federal government's job to withhold funding from a school because they include something in their curriculum that the federal government deems inappropriate, where that locality found that to be a relevant locus of education. So what you see then is an abandonment of the original purpose that's long past. You don't have this problem.
So that was the example that he gave of ideological capture. And then he's saying it's not appropriate that the federal government is making decisions about, but like none of that really makes sense. The federal government, if they're providing federal funds to things, probably should have some say over like how the money is spent, right? We probably wouldn't want a public school that just teaches kids how to give the best blowjobs, right? We probably wouldn't want schools that teach kids how to be Navy SEALs operators at age 12. We probably wouldn't want federally funded schools that teach kids how to play League of Legends, right? Yeah. So
I think we well, that last one maybe we should have. I do think we should have federal standards of education, like curriculum. Like every student needs to know how to read. Every student needs to know this basic historical.
Well, that's fine. What you just suggested, like, even our current Department of Education doesn't do that. What you just suggested, there would be a huge overreach that conservatives and Vivek especially wouldn't agree with. But okay.
That's fair.
Okay, sorry. All right, okay. We're back up from this. Okay. Pulling out, coming back.
I don't know how much time you have. Are you?
Oh, I'm good. My next convo is in 53 minutes, so.
Okay. Can I?
You can do whatever you want, wherever you want to go next. Yeah. Or actually, can I just say? Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have it? I mean, do you want to? Because I've.
You're good, issues. Right? And listen, okay, this is a lot. We are in debater mode right now, or I'm in debater mode, right? So this conversation is a lot more exhausting than our last one. I totally acknowledge that. Okay, there's a lot, but like from my perspective, okay, so this was just one thing that you believed about this particular thing, and maybe you think that it wasn't even that big of a deal. And in a vacuum, I might even say the way that Vivek, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but like. My frustration when I have to argue with somebody about macro government positions. So when I say macro, maybe I'm talking about like who should be president or what big foreign policy initiative or immigration initiative should we have. I have to chew through so many of these talking points. And this was to fact check like a 30-second thing that Vivek said here. This was like an hour of reading that also was informed by a whole bunch of preliminary studying that I've done on the structure and function of government. Totally. So there was a lot just to get through these 30 seconds. So when you asked me earlier, is it really fair for you to say that people shouldn't trust Vivek? I'd say no, because he just gave a summary of a thing that could lead you to believing so many different things. He just blamed the Department of Education on what I would say is easily a fault of the Congress, and totally misled people on a particular, like the same problem could happen even if the Department of Education didn't exist because Congress passed another bad law related to this, right? That's all I'm saying. To summarize all of this, whether you think Vivek is good or bad or right or wrong, or whether you agreed 100% with me or not on this, it's a lot of work to chew through a lot of these talking points. And okay.
Yeah, and I understand. And I know I've seen the people that you deal with. Now, to be fair, you bring a lot of on yourself. I think you open your doors to debate anyone and everyone. So, but fair enough. Okay, but this is the broader point I was going to get to.
Okay.
Given this.
Yeah.
And this is why. So when I say vibes based, what I mean is, I mean a bunch of different things, but one of them is heuristics. I don't fucking know what Tylenol does to my body, like at a chemical level or what, at a molecular level. I just know that my doctor and other people and the FDA said it was cool. I've never once read a study that says the climate is warming. I just trust it. I could not defend at all in any debate whatsoever the theory of evolution.
Sure.
Don't know why it's believed. Missing link. I think we can predict shit. It would be all vague nonsense bullshit. But I'm utterly confident that the theory of evolution is true.
Okay.
So just broadly, I think it's justified, perhaps not to you or your audience, but it's certainly justified for people to come here, or to just generally people to have opinions that they cannot even begin to defend because they have the heuristic of, well, like with evolution, it's like, okay, if fucking every scientist, Richard Dawkins, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, all these different people who hate each other to some degree and disagree with each other. Brett Weinstein, well, like if all of them agree it's true, that's a good heuristic for saying it's probably true, right?
I'm trying really hard not to attack you. Okay, broadly.
No, attack me.
Okay,
please.
Broadly,
Just
I think I would agree with you. We don't have time to learn everything about every single thing. Okay, but what is Trump's administration, if not embodied by people who stand in opposition to every single field of science when they inhabit these positions, right? Vivek's position here of abolishing the Department of Education. Every single educated country in the world has a federal state entity for education. Or when we talk about the HHS head now, RFK Jr., right?
Bobby?
Like, yeah. Nobody has the feelings on vaccines that he stands in opposition to so many different people, to so many government bodies, to so many other countries. Like, what do we, like, why would we trust what they say? How, like, what is your heuristic that leads you to trust some of these people when they stand in opposition to all of the other people?
That's a good question. So like with Vivek, which I believe that is how you say it, his name. It's Vivek like cake, is how I've seen it. I'm trying not to be racist.
Okay.
With Vivek, like I said, it's hard, but that's the thing. It's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to explain. Like it is an intuitive, like it's kind of like if like, you know, I don't know how you, like charisma. Like what makes one person more charismatic than someone else? It's like I can kind of put words to it. Like they sound more confident. Yeah, but like what? Like tell me at what point the inflection changes such that you know, and you can identify them. Like if someone ends on like a high note constantly, like
sure.
That, you know, and you can get to, but like there's a certain point where it's just beneath the ability to articulate it. And so, you know, I like it's not a satisfying answer, but like
no,
I've listened to several hours of conversation with Vivek, and which like Candace is the opposite. Candace Owens, who's on the right, just like Vivek, but I would say is significantly different. Like Candace Owens fucking lies through her teeth, says shit that I think she knows is bullshit. She's there to sell fucking ads, you know.
Sure.
Like
well, let's say real quick.
I can tell that, but I can't like. It's hard to articulate exactly where they. Like,
yeah, so
I
understand.
Is a worse liar than Vivek, right? In your world,
they're both bad to me. I don't know how I could even rank them, but
okay.
Let's say that
fair. I would say Candace is definitely worse than Vivek.
What do you mean when you say worse? What are we qualifying?
Just overall, in terms of like willing to bend the truth for instrumental gain.
Oh, Candace is almost second to none. She's fucking insane.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
But then I would argue that I can make the argument that people like
that's your position. Just to be clear, we talked about this last time. I do think Candace is right about a lot of things.
That's fine, but I'm just saying that even given that standard, though, I could argue that Vivek is worse because he comes off as more trustworthy, so people are more likely to believe his lies, whereas Candace is an easy litmus test for, obviously it's crazy, Candace said it. Backing up, you just said that you can listen to Vivek talk. Okay, earlier you told me, you gave me a way for developing an intuitive heuristic. Heuristics aren't intuitive. A heuristic for whether or not you would believe a particular thing, and you talked about evolution. What if it was the case that tomorrow Vivek did a little 1-minute spiel on why he didn't believe in evolution? Are you now, because he's charismatic enough, is that going to move you off that position? Did the consensus of the scientific community and everything not actually matter at all before, and it's just the charismatic thing? Or how do you do it when these two things clash?
Well, we have an actual example of this with Tucker Carlson, when Tucker Carlson was on Joe Rogan and said, macroevolution, that's never been proven. And Joe's like, are you serious? What do you mean macroevolution's never been proven? And that in my mind was like, oh, okay, that right there cements further for me, because I had a different view on Tucker, although I think Tucker fulfills an important role. But like Tucker Carlson denies outright evolution.
Yeah, but why do you think
that?
Wait, but why was Joe Rogan your litmus test for that? Because didn't Joe Rogan in a conversation with
Joe Rogan at the time?
Sure, but didn't Joe Rogan in a conversation with Matt Walsh deny the moon landing?
Did he? Does Joe?
He does. He doesn't believe in the moon landing.
Does Joe not believe in the moon landing?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm confident in the moon landing, but I'm more confident in the theory of evolution. I mean, it's not.
But why are you more confident in the theory? How many? Because
there's more people of differing ideological views of high credibility.
So almost every person of high credibility would disagree with almost every prescription Vivek gives on government.
Okay, surely you understand that statement is suspect.
Okay, give me...
Almost every person of high credit... We're talking about 300 million people. Glenn Lowry, do you think?
I'm not talking about YouTubers. I'm saying just in the people that work and do education and administer around the world, and people that study education. People like I haven't seen any body of people or group of serious people that have said, "Oh yeah, abolishing these higher level educational entities would be way better for educational attainment in the United States." I haven't seen anybody credible that said that ever.
I mean,
it's just politicians.
What do you? I believe Thomas Sowell wrote a book about basically switching to private education. Is Thomas Sowell a complete fucking moron? Does he have
Thomas Sowell is literally cited all the time because he is such an outsider to the rest of the academic world. That's why people obsess over Sowell so much, of course.
Or he's just famous and he's the easiest one to go to.
No, he's literally cited over and over again because he's like a hardcore libertarian-esque person who stands against DEI and wokeness, and he's cited over and over again.
Sure, but like, I'm not saying this to convince you. I'm just saying this to tell you what I honestly believe. It is absolutely the case that there are, in my mind, intelligent people of presumably good character, although you can only tell so much, obviously, but like they don't seem like obvious narcissists or something like that, or liars or psychopaths. Intelligent people of seemingly good character with some level of credibility who would agree that, hey, you could probably get rid of the Department of Education and scale down the government bureaucracies significantly. That seems... To be honest, I would even go so far as to say most people would agree that the government bureaucracy is overbloated to the point where it could use serious reduction.
It's a political talking point, though. Who does it? Nobody does that, because when they finally get in and look at government, like, oh fuck, okay, this is actually pretty hard. That's why there's never been like serious like cutting of it.
Maybe, or that's one possibility. Another possibility is that they're entrenched in settings. It's difficult to fire all these different.
Really? Why? The president has the authorization to do it.
Well, now he does, right? Wasn't that the whole shit? Wasn't that the? Or what's the?
Or I mean, Congress has the authorization to cut down on these things as well. Like,
Congress is gridlocked with all kinds of.
Okay, so I'm curious. Do you think that under Donald Trump, do you think that the federal spending is going to significantly decrease or decrease at all?
No, probably not. Trump's a terrible president. Trump will be probably a worse president.
Okay, but this guy Vivek that you trust is literally on the committee of Doge with fucking Elon.
Oh,
so
yeah, I will say, in spite of what Vivek and Elon do, Doge, Department of Government Efficiency.
So then,
what do you like? Peter Thiel?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Do you hate him?
I've heard a lot of not great things about him, but
have you verified those things that are not great about him?
No, but every single person I've seen in the crypto community that talks about politics or anything related to government is absolutely fucking delusional and insane, and they all support Trump.
So how confident are you that Peter Thiel is not a high credible individual?
Probably like 25-30%.
Okay.
But the fact that everything that comes from that community, oh yeah, sure. I haven't dug into him at all.
Okay, well, Peter Thiel is an example. There's many. I think it's Ben Horowitz. It's like Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz. They're like two tech guys, who've built all these different companies and stuff. It's like there was a significant Silicon Valley backing of, Donald Trump. Like, those people have demonstrable proof that they're at least intelligent, given that they've produced large companies that are successful.
Yeah, but is your assumption that they're supporting Donald Trump out of some goodwill for how government should function, or that they're just interested in their own capital investments in their businesses?
Well, I think those two things can overlap. I think it can be in the.
I'm not asking if anything could overlap, right? I'm asking you, what would you think more likely is driving them?
What were the options you gave me?
The good, like the care and good of the country, or just self-interest in their own companies?
I believe those two. I don't think those are separable. I think what's in your self-interest is often, if you're a sane person, is good for the country as well.
If I were to grant you that, let's say that I grant you that, why wouldn't I make that exact same argument about every single government bureaucracy? Why wouldn't I say the same thing about the Department of Education?
You can.
But you don't believe that. You think that these things are bureaucratic,
Correct.
like nightmares that just justify their own bullshit and blow themselves up. Why would a capital owner of a business not be that times 10? He's got even worse incentives and even more like individual.
Make government more efficient and
no, to extract rents from the government, to make money off of bad government policy.
Again, that certainly happens. No doubt, you're correct that happens.
I'm just saying incentives. Like, why would if I don't trust the Department of Education, why would I trust a billionaire who stands to gain so much from like rigging a government in his favor?
I guess it depends on the billionaire. Like, I've listened to Peter Thiel and talk for a while, and he seems very reasonable. And you can be a billionaire and not be evil. Like, you can be a billionaire and you can believe in the welfare of the country.
Sure. What has he done to demonstrate that that's the thing that he significantly cares about?
Like reducing government inefficiency?
That doesn't show any of that. Has he reduced government inefficiency?
Sure.
Like, well, I'm asking, what has he
you're
done to show that he significantly cares about the health and welfare of the country? I could point to somebody like Bill Gates, for instance, who spends a whole bunch of money in research on like malaria stuff, invested a ton in like vaccine related research. Like, I look at a guy like this, I could say Mark Cuban, started a company to try to make low income people be able to afford pharmaceutical things. Like, those are two examples I could point at.
They happen to be left wing though. Do you happen to know any right wingers who've done good things?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Wait. Do you think is that an argument against my point at all?
It's not an argument at all. It's a heuristic again.
No. I'm not using a heuristic there. A heuristic is when you are when you're kind of like generalizing things based off of pattern recognition. I gave you discrete, specific examples of here's two people.
This is what I was gonna say to answer your question. I was like, I guess it's a seeming thing. It's like, unless I have reason not to, I'm going to default to. Like, when I walk down the street, like, well, what proof have you seen that this guy won't fucking run you over with his car? It's like, well, it's just pattern recognition.
Okay,
so
no, hold on.
Okay.
So what does a guy have to gain from running? Okay, here's the thing. Let's say that you found out that today was the purge, and you know that you fucked some dude's girlfriend, okay, and she cheated on him, and he knows, and you know, and you see him at the other end of the street in his car. Would you assume he's going to run you over, or that he would just drive right past you?
In that circumstance, yes, my pattern recognition, it would be a deviation from the pattern.
Sure. Because, no, it wouldn't be. It would be exactly the pattern. What are the incentives, right? Well, of course he's going to run me over. He fucking hates me. And there's no penalty for killing me right now, right? In ordinary society, there is a penalty. Why the fuck would somebody want to kill you? But I can give you a reason why a billionaire would want to extract rents from the government and design policy that would favor his company. Of course, that's what you'd expect.
True. But, okay, fair enough. So we have that as one piece of evidence. But then the other piece of evidence is, like, it could perfectly be the case that a billionaire benefits broadly when the American economy does well. And if reducing government inefficiency causes the economy to do well generally, then that billionaire will disproportionately benefit over the average person. So, of course, he has a higher than normal incentive to reduce government inefficiency.
So then do you apply that same metric across every huge billionaire, every huge company in the United States? Would you say the same thing about the military-industrial complex? That the military-industrial complex is the best interests of the American government, the American country?
I think the military-industrial complex, to the degree that we're talking about the same thing, is its incentive is to produce military weapons, and creating demand for military weapons is war. So they have an incentive to adopt a foreign policy that is more likely to lead to war, and then justify it after the fact.
Okay, so we can say that, for instance, real quick, so like the F-35 program, I think is one of the most expensive programs in U.S. history. That wasn't created in response to a war, right? It's not like they needed to create a war for us to deploy F-35s against an enemy, right?
Well, the prospect of future conflict needed to be there, otherwise it wouldn't have been used ever.
Sure, but they don't need to create that. There's always going to be future potential conflict, right?
Well, yeah, stoked by the military-industrial complex.
Do you think all conflict in all of human history?
Of course not.
Okay, so military conflict will happen whether we're stoking anything or not, right? But then,
no, not the same degree. Certainly the military-industrial complex, which I'm aware is a vague term, but like, let's assume there's some reality, or you understand what I'm saying when I'm talking about that, at least in my conception. They can certainly influence whether or not moral conflict happens or not.
Yeah, they could, but like conflict has always happened in all of human history without any kind of military, like kings and brothers.
But it's a matter of But it's a matter of degree.
But we're in like one of the more peaceful times in all of human history right now, where our military-industrial complex is like spending the most.
There's a war in Europe right now.
There were two world wars in Europe. There was the dissolution of Yugoslavia that was accompanied with genocides.
It's degree. That's what I'm saying. It's degree.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I'm saying degree. I'm saying the military-industrial complex is probably as big and as technologically sophisticated as it ever has been, but it's not like we're starting wars all over the world and everything, right?
What? Let's say I take that. Okay. But what is the point about like evaluating incentives and all that?
It feels like there's another heuristic. There's something deeper that's running, some program or algorithm running that's deeper than this, because I don't see you applying this evenly to anything, right? Because I would ask, like, what are the companies that Peter Thiel has? What is he like most invested in?
I believe it's equity. It might be private equity. It might be just a general venture capital firm. I don't know exactly. I don't know all the details.
Well, so then you don't even care. What if you did the research tomorrow and you're like, what if you did the research tomorrow and you found out, oh, he does private equity and 90% of his private equity goes towards military contracts?
Actually, I believe that's true. I think he's a major investor in like Palantir and all these different military industrial complex companies.
Oh, well then how could you possibly
Because
it makes sense for me. Go ahead.
The military industrial complex, like I said, it's a vague idea. It's not like everyone who works one of my best friends works for a defense contractor. Just because you're in the defense industry doesn't mean you're complicit then in the creation of war all over the world.
Yeah, but he's not just in the defense industry. He's the owner of a company. And you just said the military industrial complex was incentivized to create conflict to further justify themselves.
There are many people that critique Peter Thiel. There's people who are on the right who critique Peter Thiel to a significant degree. I believe for this exact line of thing. Peter Thiel was the example that came to mind. I mean, you can
give me another example if you want. How do you feel like the Curtis Yarvin guy?
Ben Horowitz or Mark Andreessen, although they probably have investments in military industrial complex stuff. Did you say Curtis Yarvin?
Yeah, isn't he isn't he a guy that like influences a lot of these people?
Yeah, I don't think he's a billionaire though. He's kind of a
no, but he's supposed to be influential to a lot of these like Silicon Valley crypto whatever.
Well,
bros, right?
I guess it sounded like you were going to say. And so correct me if I'm wrong. You believe that I'm not like. I'll trust me, I will not be offended if the answer is yes. But you believe that I am there. I'm captured in some to some degree, not like incentive wise with money or something like that. Although I'm more than willing to keep my opportunities open. But something psychologically is driving me to distort my perceptions unconsciously.
Yeah, 1,000,000,000,000%. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think that is specifically?
I don't know you well enough to say. Because I've already accused you of believing some things where you've said that, like, well, actually, I don't say that at all. So I could be right. So I don't know. Mm-hmm.
What would you need to ask me to find that out?
What would I need to ask you to figure out?
Or how would you go about finding that out? I don't know. Like, what information would you need to know about me or what I believe or what I've said or
okay.
Or who I'm paid by?
Okay. Let's run down a few policy things. I'm going to make some predictions of how I think you would feel, and then you tell me if I'm right or wrong, okay?
Yes.
Okay. You're familiar broadly with Andrew Tate, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm
Yep. Okay.
familiar, yes.
Broadly speaking, my guess is you would say that Andrew Tate is probably on the net a negative influence for men, and he's probably done some bad things. You're not 100% sure if all the charges in Romania are fair, and it seems like they might drum these up a little bit, but all in all, he's probably not a great guy. Is this about your opinion of Andrew Tate?
Except for the fact that he probably did do all the charges because of what he said about,
including the rapes and everything that he was accused of, or
I don't know. I know the trafficking charge. I don't know what the full extent.
Okay.
Yes. Broadly, I agree. He's a net negative.
Okay. On the COVID lab leak stuff, is this a thing that you would say? This was one of the largest examples of the mainstream media suppressing conversation about a topic that should have deserved to have been spoken about more because people that believed in lab leak were totally and wholly vindicated by evidence that came out later?
I believe they were mostly vindicated, is my current understanding, but not totally. But other than yet, yes, mostly vindicated.
Okay. For mRNA vaccines, would you say that a lot of the conspiracies around it are probably not true at all, but that like there's reason to be concerned for some things, and mandating these things was definitely the wrong decision?
Mandating it was definitely the wrong decision. I want you to be right on the vaccine stuff. I know enough. There's plenty of people in my life who got the vaccine. I don't want them fucking dying. So
okay.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I think the lockdowns were bad in hindsight and done poorly. The mRNA stuff, I still don't know what the evidence suggests about how safe it is. I got the J&J, and I personally would not get the mRNA. I would get if there was the J&J option, which was less effective but not mRNA, I would get that. And that's what I did. Like, okay. And I'm not certain that when Brett Weinstein talks about the like you don't vaccinate during the pandemic, you vaccinate prior to the pandemic.
Yeah. Do you think that
I don't know the validity of all that.
Do you think that it was broadly true that social media companies were cracking down on conservatives more than liberals, and this opinion was especially exemplified in the Twitter files?
I saw your debate about it, so I'm a little bit more informed on that.
Oh,
I know.
okay. Fuck.
So
okay.
I think it was pretty even, right? Didn't the Trump administration request a bunch of stuff?
Okay. So you think it was
It is
even?
possible. Well, well, I don't know. It is possible that on balance, I don't know how you'd measure it
Sure.
objectively, but it was not as
Okay.
clear as.
Do you agree that conservatives downplay Donald Trump's weaponization of the Department of Justice and the justice system for sure, because he is vindictive and he has gone after people, but the reason why conservatives downplay it is because the left absolutely weaponizes the Department of Justice as well, and that it's probably pretty bad on both sides, probably about equivalent, especially exemplified in the New York State charges against Trump, where they made up basically new felony charges to convict him of a crime that wasn't even really that bad. And there's probably been a ton of other crimes committed by presidents in the past that they haven't been held accountable for, but because of how politicized we are, we went after Trump now.
That sounded good to me, what you just said.
Okay. Epstein was absolutely killed in prison by somebody who didn't want his list of things getting out.
I would say 85 to 90%.
Okay.
Not 100%. Can't be, but 85.
Okay. Let me think. Let me try to do one more. Hold on.
It's like a BuzzFeed quiz.
Yeah.
You know, how centrist am I really? Yeah.
Fuck. Give me the Russian-Ukraine war is absolutely terrible. Russia absolutely shouldn't involve Ukraine or invaded Ukraine. There's absolutely no justification for it. That's all definitely true. However, the fact that the United States is driving Ukraine on so much by providing weapons and increasing the likelihood of driving all of us towards World War III or some nuclear conflict makes it unacceptable for us to continue supporting them, and that we need to have found an off-ramp for peace already or find one as aggressively as possible, even if it means Ukraine has to give some territory back to Russia. It would make the world better for everybody moving forward.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody
Is there any
says,
other one? Is there any other one?
Hard. No, sorry.
Yeah. Is there any other one like thing that you would want to give me that you want to see if I can like try to print your opinion on? Give me like one other topic or a big thing that you think is important.
I don't really know how you're.
Oh, here's a. Do you think that when it comes to immigration, the Democrats are too lax on the border, and that even if the Republicans maybe have some like racist talking points every now and then, and they definitely see some things that aren't that great, we definitely need to crack down on immigration significantly, and the left has downplayed it far too much, especially when it comes to things like crime coming into the border or drugs coming into the border?
Yeah, I think we should grant a decent amount of amnesty, so long as it's tied to essentially shutting down the border for at least some period of time.
Sure. Okay.
That doesn't include like in-process immigration and stuff, like people who applied.
Sure.
For visas, all that.
Okay. So I feel like my diagnosis is I feel like it reinforces the thing I said before, that I think that you are just entirely captured by like the media environment that the right wing has created. That a lot of your understandings of how the world works, of how government works, of how laws are passed, of the functions of all the things in society, epistemically, I feel like there's just been this huge capturing of the right-wing epistemology, that it usually relies a lot on underplaying or downplaying the accomplishments and the validity of institutional or structural things that exist. It often relies on dramatically overplaying the confidence of people that can just sell a message well. So it might be a billionaire, it might be somebody that shows up on social media a lot or different alternative media platforms that speaks well.
Or a famous online political streamer.
I feel like, that would be my guess, that would be my diagnosis. And I would say that the solution for that, assuming you don't have heroic, larger than life figures like me who single-handedly reform the media landscape, is it's boring, but it's like you just have to. I mean, obviously, this is my diagnosing you, right? So obviously, you can disagree with everything I'm saying, right? But I would say, like, what you have to do is you have to step out of the passive media feed that you're in, meaning not just allowing algorithms or what you're used to watching to show you things because they're going to continue to reinforce this, and you have to like start fact-checking things more aggressively. And fact-checking doesn't just mean looking for another podcaster talks about it, but like what we did earlier with Vivek, like, oh, what was being spoken about? Let's Google this. Okay, what was the federal government doing? Oh, okay. Well, what was the law? Oh, okay. Well, what is the structure of government? How did they pass the laws? Is okay, like that. That would be that process.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Because everything you said, what did you say?
It's not like you were every single thing I would disagree with. Every single thing I said, 100%. Yeah.
What about the Andrew Tate thing? He's broadly negative, and He probably did do all the things. What was your
actually,
disagreement
wait.
of that?
The Andrew Tate thing, that might be like the only thing that I would agree with. Sorry, I forgot that one. Yeah.
I wish we wrote these down. I want to go back because everything you said sounded reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's go back from the beginning.
All right, Russia. Well,
The reason why I started with the Andrew Tate one is because the reason why I started with the Andrew no. The reason why I started with the Andrew Tate one is because my claim about right-wing media is that there is a rigid buy-in on important key concepts, but at the peripheral, people are free to disagree on things that aren't really that important. And Andrew Tate and some of the stuff related to him, I believe, can kind of be one of those issues. So like another question that I would have asked and tried to predict is if I were to say something like, how do you feel about Donald Trump's character or behavior? I would have probably said, you think that Donald Trump's character and behavior, especially how he treats other politicians or whatever, is not really great. It's probably not something we should like exemplify, but like as the president, it's not really that important. Like if that he's like a great Christian or whatever. And people probably fixate on it too much is what I would have said for your answer to that.
Maybe I'm not super.
Don't care that much about it. Yeah, sure. But these would be like peripheral issues where I think there's some room for wiggling, and I think people delude themselves into thinking that like, well, look, I can disagree. But then on things like for the immigration thing, right? I think that the immigration issue right now in the United States is almost entirely fictitious insofar as the problems are concerned. That when conservatives talk about they're stealing all the jobs, they're not. Unemployment is incredibly low. They're bringing in record amounts of crime. That's not true. If it was, we wouldn't be talking about Lincoln Riley 8 months later. It would be different cases being brought up. And the idea that the issue is an open border is also not true. It's the asylum-seeking process, which conservatives just don't talk about enough when it comes to fixing it, and the mass deportations that they're suggesting are fucking delusional. For the COVID lab leak stuff, that hasn't been validated at all. There's no new evidence supporting it.
I thought Robert Redford came out and said it was likely.
No, no new.
CDC director?
All the research that has come out has been slowly moving in the direction of it was probably from the wet markets. There's been nothing out. All the two original studies that came out saying that it was probably lab leak. Both of those have been like nobody takes it serious anymore. So,
okay.
Fair
enough.
Yeah, I'm just running down the disagreements, but but go ahead. You're going to do
That's fair. Other than basically just listen to whatever you say, what should you said I should do more fact checking, but we agreed earlier. There's like, think of how stressful it was to go into all that fact checking for just one claim. We have to operate by heuristics. So aside from if Destiny says it must be true. Just not joking, but like, what other heuristics?
There's none. This is why I'm saying this is the issue is I don't know. Fair. Like even I ran into this where when I look something up, I was like, I need to look this up. No, yeah, I have to go back and look everything up. I don't trust anybody that says a thing anymore. I've got to go read the underlying material because I just don't trust anything that I read because the media environment is so poisoned and so horrible right now and everybody's so detached from reality. I wish I had an answer for you where I'm like, oh, like just watch this media thing, just watch this. But the media apparatus right now is fucking deranged. It's terrible.
So I'll tell you my, and then I'll. 20 minutes, right? And then you're on your next person?
Yeah. Wait. Can you give me 15 seconds?
Go ahead.
Hold on.
I'll give you 20. Should I say the N-word?
Okay, hi.
Hello. All right. So this is my heuristic, and I would like to I would like you to tell me what you think.
Okay.
So here's how I see it. The world is infinitely complex. There is literally an infinite amount of facts that you could pay attention to.
Yeah.
The fundamental question is, how do we know which facts are most relevant to achieving the outcomes we want to achieve? And then assuming that you and I want a thriving, general, flourishing society. Okay. Because there is people that are outside of that value structure. But if that's a value structure we're in.
Yeah.
Because there's an infinite amount of facts, you basically need a team. You need a team composition, like in League.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't just have a tank. Or you can't all be tanks. You could, but assuming you're matched with an even level team, the optimal team is a diverse team, right? Tanks,
Sure.
80 carries. Okay. So what you need is a significant number of people deeply doing the vertical dives that we just did about the archery thing into literally everything, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, be good at that or do it right. But then more importantly, we have to figure out how then do we know because I can never evaluate the methodology, right? So the heuristic is how do I know if someone is worth listening to generally? And my theory, which is a Jordan Peterson maps of meaning theory, the technical way of describing it would be, it'll sound ridiculous, but it's the more that someone embodies what is technically called the hero archetype, the more likely it is that we can trust them. And that what generally means is, basically I just look for who seems generally competent, generally good willed, good natured. That's a stupid way to say it, but and the simplest way to say it is generally who do I vibe with when it comes to listening to. And I have a pretty wide range. I listen to I have a minor in gender studies. I listen to the most left-wing people on earth. I'll listen to Judith Butler. I'll listen to them explain their philosophies in an unchallenged environment. I'll listen to the far right and their white ethno-state, anti-race mixing stuff. Okay, and everything in between. And it is ultimately a vibes-based thing of like, well, this person makes sense on some things, blah, blah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The key thing for me is who is most likely to it's kind of hard to say it, but it's like who is most likely to exploit divisions within their own tribe. And that's like the Joe Rogan, Charlie Kirk example. Charlie Kirk's voting for Trump no matter what. Joe Rogan could have in a somewhat different world, not that different. Joe Rogan could easily have voted for the left-wing candidate. And to me, that's an important distinction that says, and this is about it because they all have their flaws. Any individual you do this for is going to have their flaws. But it's like like Joe Rogan is less of a tribal fucking sycophant than Charlie Kirk. And like Jordan Peterson prior to doing benzos and doing the Daily Wire and all this shit, like his lectures, you even said, I watched back our old conversation prior to this, and you said something like, Jordan Peterson you like emphasize it, like he's an insanely curious person. Like you could tell, like in his lectures. Like that is like that's a fundamental thing. And like that, it's hard to describe, but like that, I see that in like Vivek. Or even like J.D. Vance to some degree. Now, J.D. Vance lies through his fucking teeth. Okay, but again, I think that's a function of, I don't think any politician can be 100% honest on anything, right? Like, politicians have to lie. That's a function of democracy, right? Because like, what is the truth? Well,
my God.
Really? Okay, well, but my broader point is, I think if you want people to agree with you, you need to. It will never be done through rational argumentation. Like the dialogue you and I are having, I don't think is. It might convince people on the margins. Like there are some. Like most of the people are either going to already agree with you, or some are going to agree with me. There's some in between who are like, this is actually changing my mind to some degree. The majority of people make up their minds on vibes and intuition, and I think your attitude is, and this is similar to Peter Boghossian's attitude, who reacted to one of my videos. He said this at the end that I disagreed with. He was like, we need to teach people how to be more like, to be able to rationally analyze and do these type of dialogues, which is true. We do need to do that. But fundamentally, it's more important. This is so fucking lame, but I believe it. It's more important to be a good person generally. Like be someone that people look up to. And like, and for example, the reason me and many people listen to you, is like because like you clearly are able to demonstrate good humor. You're funny. You can have these type of dialogues. It was aggressive earlier, but like you said, like, hey, I'm in debate mode and blah blah. So there's like, because obviously when you're in fucking Mr. Borelli mode, it's psychopathic and scary. And I would say that's the fucking. My advice, worth nothing, would be, to the best of your ability, try not to revel in people's deaths. But it's not like a hot take you haven't heard before. But like, that is the most important thing for generating the charisma, which then unconsciously causes people to want to believe in what you have to say, independent of your rationalizations for it.
Okay. So,
and
we're here. Can I ask some questions? Or go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, that's why I said we're getting into the details too much at one point. And I didn't mean details are not important. I meant it felt like the level of analysis is now so granular that it does ultimately come down to a vibes-based thing at that point. And we might as well have just leaned on a vibes-based heuristic at the top.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? What do you think of in a simple sense? Anti-intellectualism is based. Fuck policy. Go with vibes.
Well, so here's the question, okay?
Yeah.
You said you're 28, 29?
I'll be 28 in exactly 1 week. Or 2.
Okay.
1 week. Ish.
Have you ever bought a car before?
I bought it from my parents.
From your parents?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about buying cars or talking to car salesmen?
I've gone with them to, when we were doing that in high school or in college.
When you look at a car salesman, what are the reputations that they have? Like, how do people view them, like, morally?
Sleazy.
Yeah.
They'll say anything.
Yeah.
Surface level charm, snake oil salesman.
Absolutely. When you watch a car salesman interact with a customer, what do they look like?
Sleazy?
Do they?
I don't know. I don't have much experience with it. I mean, I'm assuming, like, you can have false charm. I've talked to people who,
yeah, they're salesmen,
like
right?
Salesmen. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't come off as sleazy. They come off as honest. They try to come off as honest,
Correct.
personable,
Correct.
funny, understanding, caring, right? If I were to go to a Honda dealership and I wanted to buy a car, would I trust that salesman to tell me the pros and cons accurately of having a Honda?
It's probably not.
Probably not, right?
But maybe, I don't know, because you could argue that the most effective sales tactic is to be honest with someone.
Do you
They're
think that's
good
true, though?
salespeople.
If that was true, would salesmen have a commission-based job? Would they have the reputation of being
I see
funny?
what you're saying. I like low-level sales, that's less likely to be the case. It's just volume.
Or anywhere, because you said yourself, right, that politicians are like have to lie, right? That was your own.
Yeah, which I'm surprised you disagree with.
Sure. Oh, there's varying degrees, but that's not relevant. But I'm just saying that you think that. Okay. So a car salesman, it's a commission-based job, right? So chances are people are going to emulate the best tactics. Lying to some extent, right? Probably is good. So we agree we probably don't trust the Honda salesman to give us the best drawbacks of the Honda cars, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, the level 1 idiot would tell you, well, he's a salesman, he knows everything. He's going to give us the pros and cons, right? Level 2 might say, okay, well, I don't trust the Honda salesman. I'm going to go get more opinions. And let's say that he goes across the street to the Ford salesman. Do you think that the Ford salesman is going to give you an accurate cons to driving a Honda?
No, he'll probably over-exaggerate it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's playing the same game, he's just on a different team.
Yes. So you go to the Carfax. You say, show me the Carfax.
Correct.
Incentive removed.
Yes. So the issue that I have when people are like, they're centrist and they listen to a bunch of different media, why would I think that a person could give me the pros and cons of any vehicle just because they've spoken to a different car salesman? I wouldn't expect you to know anything about the negatives of driving a Honda just because you spoke to somebody trying to sell you a Ford. Obviously, he's going to be over-exaggerating everything there. And the Honda guy is going to be talking his car up as much as possible. And, he's going to tell you probably over-exaggerate what's wrong with Fords, right? Mm-hmm. I think that what we need in society is we need something like a Carfax. And, like, what does a Carfax do when you're reading a Carfax, is it going to be telling you like, this car is exhilarating, this car makes you feel full of life, this car makes you feel like a real American hero? What's on a Carfax?
It's like miles and all
It's
that.
autistic, boring, in the weeds, discreet. Like, here's the VIN, motorcycle accident, 2017, repair shop, oil changes. Like, oh my God, who cares? But we like Carfax because they are accurate and they have a history, a record of accountability. Go ahead.
That's not what sells cars. It's the salesman telling you it'll make you thrilling and it'll make you cool and it'll get you women.
Yeah. So the issue is what has to happen is in a world right now where the Carfax is really fucking boring, what I need, what I want, what I would want to be, or I would have a media company doing, whatever, I don't know, that's what I'm trying is I need a really entertaining, funny person to be the guy that's selling the Carfax. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want somebody to do or be, and I don't see that. Yeah. But right now in the world, it's just a bunch of car salesmen that are selling their own cars, and then people are trying to tell me why their car salesman is better than the other car salesman. But at the end of the day, anything that they tell me about that car salesman, like, well, this guy is incentivized to lie about the seatbelt safety in his car, or causing wars like the military-industrial complex, well, that other guy could be lying about, you know, the seatbelts in his car, or it could be a billionaire who owns, you know, companies that sell weapons of war. I need more people that are willing to go to the actual raw data, analyze it, and then dump it into the public in a way that's entertaining, that people like to watch. That, yeah, that's like the, but that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And when you talk about like, well, what makes a good salesman, all of those things that make a good salesman, these are the things that a liar looks to emulate, right? If you've ever known a good manipulator, okay, a good BPD girl, a good narcissistic man, or whatever, these people don't meet people on first impression. Oh, I fucking hate you. Oh, you fucking horrible person. Nobody manipulates a person that way. Nobody becomes obsessed with a person that way. The obsessive part is always the, when we first met, like it was magic and they used to be so wonderful and whatever. Like at the very least,
bombing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Love bombing is like one of the most important parts, right? You can't just hate bomb somebody constantly. Nobody would be obsessed with you. Everybody would just fucking hate you, right? Nobody knows a manipulator who's like, oh, that guy who smells weird all the time and always calls people racial slurs. No, they're going to be like the guy that is like really nice to you sometimes in private, right? Yeah. Sure. So the only issue that I have, all this to say, it was a long way of basically saying, the only issue I have with your heuristic is that while it can be a good heuristic for detecting honest actors, those are exactly the types of heuristics that dishonest actors are looking to exploit, and you have to figure out some way to differentiate between the two. And it can't just be they are charming, they are charismatic, and they're doing, you know, the way that they present themselves, they seem so earnest, because that's exactly what a con man does, right? Con men are not, nobody says like, oh, wait, well, one of the weird things about Hitler, to do the Vosh thing, right? One of the weird things about Hitler is like in all of his speeches, he was such a loser and nobody liked listening to him talk, and like, man, he was just so unpopular, but somehow he became the leader, right? It's always the exact opposite. So that's what you have to work on, is how do you differentiate between the two? And that comes down to some raw accounting of fact, right? What are the predictions that these people made? Do they have a record of making good predictions? Are they doing good analysis on this particular problem? If we look up the facts, the Carfax, does it actually match the things that they're saying? And so like, that's what we kind of did with Vivek here, is we pulled the Carfax. Okay, well, he's saying these about the Department of Education. Do they match 100%? Like varying degrees or whatever. But yeah, that's not really satisfying, but it's just a thing.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I take a fundamentally not because I'm qualified to, but I take a psychological approach to things. Like, I evaluate my actions and my beliefs through what are my motivations, blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why long form discussions are useful. And like I said, the only interesting Trump interview I've ever heard is where he talked about his brother momentarily, like having alcoholism. I'm like, okay, that's a human being there. I mean, you have all your like, you know, your drama arcs and all that. I don't even know what percent would you say. Probably in the last year it's been more, but like since your streaming career, what percent is like intellectual stuff versus like?
Because I started Vyvanse, it's probably like 95% like this intellectual shit. But
oh, is that what shifted it?
I started Vyvanse last year, yeah. So I haven't done any drama.
Okay, well, like, you know, obviously.
But I know what you mean. I'm personable, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of like the drama stuff, and like I have, in my opinion, I have a reasonable enough, or not reasonable, a functional enough guess as to where your weaknesses are in terms of like I'm like, I'll just be honest with you. Like, I try, like we've only talked twice, but like, I'm trying not to get in debate mode with you, because I do think that limits the conversation of at least what I'm trying to get to, like these underlying, because it's not really a debate about like, I guess it's a debate in terms of like which general heuristic is correct versus like what is the fact of the matter on this specific thing. Right? That's
true.
A different approach.
Can I ask? I'm just curious. Can I ask? Have you ever been in a long-term relationship before?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a bad relationship before?
No, it's only been one, and it was amicable.
One of the annoying things about a bad relationship.
I've definitely had, well, not. I was gonna say I've had bad relationships with people before.
Sure. One of the annoying things about bad relationships or bad friendships or bad whatever is that somebody will come at you with a feeling they have about a thing. They'll say, "I feel like you lied about when you were going to come home last night. Okay, you said you're going to be home by 6, and you weren't home until 6:30. And let's say that you, when you were coming back, let's say you got a flat tire, legitimately, right? And you did. You took a fucking picture of the cop helping you change the tire, doing whatever, right? You have all this. And let's say that eventually goes to the point where you show up in front of friends or a therapist or a third party, whatever. You just want to we need somebody to settle this disagreement. She keeps saying I'm lying, right? An issue that you're going to run into is that when you're fighting on the vibes of a thing, or you're fighting on a heuristic of a thing, maybe she's been cheated on in the past, maybe you have lied in the past, whatever. When you're fighting on the vibes of the heuristics, at some point in the conversation, you're going to have to dip into this world where you're like, okay, bitch, hold on. You said that I lied about coming home and that this didn't happen. We need to look at the fucking pictures. We have to consult the facts at some point. Because the reality is that you and her and any third party, therapist, friends, whatever, can go back and forth on that conversation for hours. You can have the long form podcast, you can have the long form discussions, the conversations, the tweets, whatever, and you might never actually hit that fact of the matter. And without getting there, what does any of the conversation matter? Because everybody's got a heuristic or a vibe based on the facts that they believe to be true. And that's just a really rough.
See, that's the exact opposite of what I think. It's like the fact of the matter is utterly irrelevant. It's like if you have a healthy couple can withstand all kinds of you said you're gonna get home at 6 and you got home at 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the only reason that becomes an argument is because all of the underlying stuff that's not addressed, and the fact of the matter is irrelevant. Now I'm also saying this from
I almost agree with you 1,000,000%, but I would say that it's because all the underlying stuff wasn't addressed, which are the facts of the matter, right? Because it feels like what happens is, when people especially in a relationship, when two people have a massive blowout fight, it's basically never going to be the case that they're having a massive blowout fight from nothing. Usually it's the case that a whole bunch of little issues have stacked up over time that have accrued in such a way that it accumulates into a huge problem that leads to a blow up, and they didn't address all the little things along the way. Yeah. But for instance, Vivek saying that the Department of Education is a horrible thing. And I'm like, well, it was a law from Congress. In the grand scheme of things, and I even said back then, this isn't probably the biggest thing in the world. But if you've peppered 1,000 or 1,000,000 of these little facts out, and then we go to have a big disagreement about we're going to abolish the Congress or abolish the Department of Education. Well, now it's like, hold up, this is so bad and dumb. But in your mind, you've already seen so much evidence for why it would be a great idea to do it. In my mind, none of that evidence has been presented. And none of those little fights happened along the way. Yeah. Which is why I think that being the debate bro, there's actually a happy medium of fighting for a good relationship. If somebody says, oh, we've never fought ever, that's kind of a red flag. There's somebody's holding a lot of resentment, or you're 1 in a trillion, right? And a couple that's we fight all the fucking time or whatever, right? Okay, well, that's probably not good. But there's a couple oh yeah, we always, sometimes we'll fight over dishes or, every whatever, it happens or whatever. But we're happy, we move on. That's good. There's not resentment building up. You're resolving things. It's being able to fight in a healthy manner is really healthy, really good. Yeah.
I agree 100%. This is the more, for what it's worth, this is the more interesting type of conversations about general philosophy, psychology stuff. So next time we talk at some point, we can go into this. I will not trigger you with Vivek and...
well, sure, but then the only reason
why... I love Tulsi Gabbard too, by the way.
I'm sure you do. But the only reason why
I do.
I like having this conversation now, okay?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't like this conversation without what happened before, is because now when I say we have to sort out all those little facts before, I know that in your mind, you're thinking oh yeah, I need to educate Destiny on trans healthcare and all blah, 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 blah. And I might be thinking oh, I need to educate PF Young on, what actually happened in Ukraine and Russia. And we're both sitting here agreeing with each other oh yeah, a couple agreeing oh yeah, yesterday you were really horrible to me, weren't you? And the other guy's maybe, yeah, but you were horrible to me. It was really bad, right? And they might be thinking of totally different ways that they were each mistreating each other. They have no idea what's going on. And yeah, that's why I think that the generalized I'll say masturbatory conversations of like, oh, like let's all agree on these broader macro things or whatever. It doesn't matter until you get down to a reducible fact of the matter of like, well, what actually happened here? And then once you've done the diagnosis on the individual things, then you can broaden it. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about what does it mean to be a snaky car salesman or whatever. Now we're grounded a bit more, but that's how
That's fair. I would say just that we can dovetail into the next conversation we have is like,
sure.
What happens when there is no fact of the matter? Like what happens when, there's a terrible way to end this. Let's say like, there are obviously like accusations of sexual assault that do not meet the criteria of full on sexual assault, because they weren't true or something like that. But like, there are many situations that are so fundamentally complicated and people that thought they were on the same page that were not. It's like, what is the fact of the matter on anything? It's like, my worldview is that there's way less fact of the matter things than we think, and we have to be able to navigate that.
Okay, my worldview is there's way more fact of the matter. Almost all of it is fact of the matter stuff.
Schizo?
Autism, I guess. But I'm right,
all right.
though, so. Okay.
That's fair. Thanks again. I'll talk to you in a few weeks or a month or so.
Okay, I love you. Be careful.
Godspeed. Peace.
Bye. Okay. I mean, it's a bathroom, and now I'm doing a conversation with somebody with Alex playing with fire. I'm not even sure what it's about. I don't remember, but I'll be back in a sec.